Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the Maui Planning Commission meeting of September 10, 2024, specifically in relation to the South Maui Community Plan. Director, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Good afternoon. I'm here at home alone.
Great. Commissioner Dikos.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am in my home office in Napili, and my wife and her son might be in and out of the room.
Great. Commissioner Lindsay.
Mike Kako, I am here in my home office in Wailuku. My mom and brother are in the room next door, but they are not in the room.
Thank you. Vice Chair Thompson.
Aloha, good morning, good afternoon all.
Chair, oh my gosh, Chair Thayer.
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, just a note on our ending time. We will lose quorum at 7 o'clock, so that will be the end of our meeting. Now to get going with our short time that we have, we will jump into public testimony. Do we have anyone signed up to testify? No? Whoa. Okay, anybody present who would like to sign up to testify? Go ahead and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Aloha, Chair Thayer, members of the commission, staff, David Good here, testifying today on policy 2.4.5A and B. I did submit testimony late this morning. I think staff was able to distribute that. I also distributed hard copies for you folks to look at. And what I attempted to do here, there's been testimony, not only from myself, but a handful of others regarding this. And I thought it might be a good idea, including the department had some recommendations, is to take everybody's ideas and see if I could distill it into a product that seemed to hit everybody's button. So that was my best attempt at that. And just to highlight, as you read through it, really what I'm trying to recognize is, number one, all gulches are not created equal. So you have to think, we have to think that each one needs, independent study. We recognize that the mapping in figure 3.17 is very initial and high level. So it's not extremely accurate at this time, and that further refinement would be needed as projects go through the process. I want to recognize that there is an existing process, what's called the 100-year 24-hour flood limits, and that's commonly done, especially for larger drainage ways. I want to provide consistency between Part A and Part B, and that if you do low impact development, then that really helps to significantly modify the requirements in terms of what type of setback is best from whatever the drainage way might be. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the gulch, you don't want to be on the edge. Other places, you can't really tell where the gulch is because it's such a gentle slope. We added things like public trails to the exemptions along with public roads and utilities. And there was a comment too about the name Kilkea as relates to Waima High, so to clarify that. So altogether, folks, I really tried my best to see if I could find a way to take all those different comments that we have, do some of the heavy lifting for you folks so that, you got something I think that does its best to meet everybody's needs. But again, number one thing I'm always looking at here is that none of these gulches and drainage ways are the same. And so we really need to recognize that and apply, good planning, good engineering for good solutions. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to testify? Please state your name for the record. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Director, Chair, members. Cal Chip Chase, seeing you again. The testimony that Mr. Good just offered with respect to gulches at 2.4.5 A and B, we also support and have put that in. I believe those are common sense changes to an important provision. At 2.1.9, the commission was going to take another look at the setback. That's the 150-foot setback along those portions of Pi'ilani Highway that aren't already developed. That would include the Honu'ula project, and I put in as an exhibit to my testimony figure showing the impact that that would have on the approved Phase 2 site plan for Honu'ula. On that map, you can see the existing required setbacks at 40 feet in one place or 45 feet in one place and 20 in another. And then what the impact of moving that up to 150 feet would be. For context, the XX area has been designated in the map approved by this commission for workforce housing. And so it would have a direct impact on the affordable housing area, likely resulting into a substantial compression of the density within the remaining area. Since our project has already been through Phase 2, we are limited to the mapping that this commission has approved. And so I would ask that the commission instead revert to the compromise that was proposed by myself and Harry Lake at the promenade and impose a 40-foot setback, which we would adopt even in those portions of our property that only have a 20-foot setback. The 150-foot setback, as the planning department articulated at the last meeting, was purely arbitrary. There's no basis in the record or anything else for it. The proposed 40-foot that Mr. Lake and I have suggested is ample. Moving quickly through the others, there are a number of other matters that the commission was going to take up, including 2.2.26, dealing with the concurrency of the development of workforce housing with the market housing. There's actually already a county code on that. It's chapter 2.96, and it provides a ratio for the development of affordable along with the market. The commission or the community plan shouldn't conflict with the law and shouldn't interfere with that ratio. 2.2.21 deals with credits, the use of credits in affordable housing development. Those are very important to the market for affordable housing, and prohibiting them in South Maui would also conflict with the law. Lastly, the commission was going to take another look at 2.2.35, which deals with shoreline access, basically requiring access for any SMA permit. That would be unconstitutional. The provision, to the extent permitted by law, doesn't save it because the burden for an exaction is on the government to establish. The government has to show nexus and proportionality. Inverting that burden by presuming the exaction and making the landowner disprove it in each case would be unconstitutional. And so we've proposed revisions to that provision. And then at the end of my letter, there is a table suggesting revisions to other provisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify?
Oh, hi. Well, you got Harry Lake here. I'm in the chat room. Is it time?
Yeah, sure. We now have people lining up, so we'll go with you and then someone here in the gallery and then someone here in the gallery.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Perfect.
Yes.
Harry Lake. I'm here representing Pi'ilani Promenade or Ka'onaolu. I've submitted written testimony as a follow-up to a previous testimony. I appreciate the commission's time to sort of review policy 2.1.9, talking about the setback. Like Mr. Chipchase mentioned, our current plans, which is signed by the state, the county, interveners, pretty public process, allowed for a 30-foot setback. The 150-foot setback would just demolish, much of the approved plan and put an undue burden on the pensioners that are investing in it right now. But that being said, like Mr. Chipchase said, we're willing to compromise and increase that setback by a third or 33% or up to 40 feet and still be able to be consistent, we believe, with the approved LUC plan and the plans approved again by the state, county, interveners, and we're prepared to move forward with. So pretty simple, short and sweet. We want to do right by the plan that's been approved, and the 150-foot setback we believe would be really difficult for us to adhere to. So mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thanks again for your testimony.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on. We might have a question for you, Commissioner Lindsay.
I'm not sure if you mentioned, but how many units is this project?
It's an industrial it's a light industrial subdivision that we're approved for, though we know that we've been asked to do residential. We'd love to explore that. And in the light of that, the 150-foot setback would even make that even much more difficult, actually. But right now, the LUC plan allows for light industrial, but again, we'd love to do residential on the property if allowed to.
Thank you.
No.
Commissioner DeCos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your testimonies. Can you remind me where that project is on?
Yeah, it's adjacent to Kalani Hako'i High School and Kalani Hako'i Gulch, right along Pi'ilani, just south of Kihei Gateway, which, by the way, is not subject to 100. That one's a very short setback. And so the setback that would be imposed by our property would be inconsistent with everything around us.
So it's just north of the high school on the Mauka side.
Exactly.
Highway.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And
Thank you.
our project in many ways would support the high school, particularly if we're allowed to do residential there or mixed use development.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lake. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Any further questions from, Commissioner Kealoha?
Does the property that you're talking about, does it go right up to the highway? So are you saying 40-foot setback from the highway or just from the property edge?
From the property edge, which doesn't go exactly the highway. So we have a little exhibit there that shows the sort of setbacks. So the parcel line as currently defined would obviously is closer to the highway than the setback. Yeah.
Do you have any feel for how far away the property line is from the road? Like how many feet?
I think it's at least 20 feet, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it's to scale. I know that the Udamori drew it to scale, so you can kind of see the lines on the exhibit, I think is written. So you can kind of see it in proportion to the highway and to the lot size.
Okay.
I think it's right there.
Thank you.
But suffice to say, it's more than what was originally asked for.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Wow.
I think we need Commissioner Lindsay back. She's still on?
Her name is still up. Oh, there she is.
Okay. All right, we can go back to the gallery for testimony. And if anybody is online that would like to testify, please alert staff in the chat. Go ahead.
Aloha, Madam Chair and esteemed commissioners. Thank you for your volunteering and taking up this matter. I would like to strongly suggest that you all follow most of what the committee put before you. I realize refinements needed to be done, but residents from South Maui sat religiously and tirelessly putting this together, looking at all of the objectives, looking at all the points of pros, cons, and it was extensive. It really was. And I attended every one of these meetings. So I can tell you that they put not only a little thought and vala'au talk, they did a lot of research, especially the local boys like Vernon Kalanikau, who's very akamai about South Kihei. His kuleana is there and has been for a century. As far as setbacks, if a developer is going to put in a subdivision, it is okay if they don't make as much as they anticipate to make. If they need to make alternate plans in which to accommodate the number of units for residents, be it smaller. That's okay. But what is not okay is when I see the kupuna in my neighborhood and along other neighborhoods in Kihei walking on the road. What is not okay is when I see the children walking along Pi'ilani Highway. When we talk about setbacks, let us not look at money. I humbly ask all of you to look at the public safety of our kupuna
1 minute.
and our children, because that is really what matters most. One life gone is one too many. And we need to start planning proactively for North Kihei, because development, as you look into your books, know that there are multiple developments on the books for South Maui, North Kihei especially. And we need to start looking at them cumulatively as one, rather than subjectively as
30
just
seconds.
individual projects. I humbly ask you to take heed and listen to what those volunteers did for over 8 months of their life, with a lot of research, a lot of time, and a lot of time away from family. Mahalo ahui ho.
Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Mahalo ahui ho. Mahalo.
Yep, come up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Rory Frampton. I represent Haleakala Ranch and Kono'ulu Ranch. Both ranches own a lot of vacant lands above Pi'ilani Highway, some of which are included in the future growth plans. I'm testifying on policies 2.4.5A and B, the same policies that David Good just talked about. The intention of these policies are to ensure that development or redevelopment near drainage ways implement low impact development strategies to minimize negative impacts from stormwater. And you guys do have a definition of low impact development in the plan. We support the concepts of low impact development. There are a number of policies that actually require incorporation of the principles of low impact development, and we're certainly not objecting to those requirements. Our concerns are with the map or the figure 3.17 and rigidly applying a 100-foot setback to all those areas showed in green. Figure 3.17 is very hard to read and interpret. I'm sure the department could produce better maps with higher resolution if they were asked to. But for right now, I mean, we tried to use it doing a site plan for a project, and we couldn't use 3.7. We had to use other figures. It's just the resolution is really poor, but I'm sure that can be fixed if you want to keep it in the plan. The figure identifies topographic features, not all of which appear to serve as drainage ways. Some are just short, non-contiguous segments with no apparent hydrologic connections to downstream areas. And some features are very minor and hardly noticeable. I went out on Friday to an area that we'll be talking to you about later on above the wastewater treatment plant in Kihei, and the mapped area was barely noticeable in places and maybe a foot deep by a couple, like several feet wide in one or two places. That's certainly different than Keokea Gulch to the north or any of the bigger gulches
1 minute.
that have thousands and thousands of CFS going through them. This one only maybe has 100 or 200. So not all, as David said, not all gulches are created equal, and they should not all be treated the same way with this, what I think is kind of an arbitrary 100-foot buffer. I would hope that you guys can use Keokea Gulch instead of Waimahai. That's the major gulch that feeds some of the wetlands in Kihei. It was a portion of it used to be
30
Waimahai.
seconds.
They got rerouted into the Keokea drainage gulch, but Keokea is the one to use. So in short, I support the amendments suggested by David and Cal. And in general, we're very supportive of the language that requires principles or policies to be addressed while providing flexibility in meeting and addressing those policies. So a lot like how the commission were making amendments last week, we really appreciate that. Thank you for your time and all your volunteer hours in support of Maui.
Thank you. Vice Chair, question?
Sure, I have a question. So on the gulches, what would you recommend a good way to map those? Is there a way?
I'd say you map it when they come in. All these projects are going to have to come in with detailed plans and designs and topographic surveys. So I say you do that then, and you can identify, as David suggested, I think what's in the policy is to identify the 24-hour, the 100-year, 24-hour storm, limit. So you can define those, and that would be a good way to define the edge of the gulches. And I think what we're looking for, I think it should be a project by project basis, and you could come in and make sure that all the topographic features are shown on the site plan, which they always are. You could identify the gulches and then make sure you do low impact development, which provides some kind of like green treatment or buffers along the edge of the gulches. But I really think it should be case by case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mhm. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify?
Chair, there's Day Gecko online signed up to testify.
Okay.
Johan Lau testifying on behalf of myself. So I actually wasn't going to testify because I was watching the debate, which is really exciting, by the way. It's the most interesting debate in a long time. But I wanted to respond to Rory Frampton regarding the gulches. So I and the other GIS folks created those gulches using pretty standard like hydrological methods in ArcGIS. And the way that we decided which gulches to include is if an area that drains into a channel is more than 5 acres, that's included. So or it might have actually been 10 acres. I'm not sure. I think the planning department could clarify. But I would urge against making it case by case or project by project because that ends up being unfair. Really, I think anything that is based on science and data should be standard. And then of course they would be able to get variances or, the conditions on their permits could be adjusted by you guys or whatever as appropriate. But the other thing is Rory was correct. That map that they included in the draft is pretty low resolution. The actual GIS data is really, really high res and really good quality because it's based on state LiDAR data, which is like, I think it's less than 1 meter resolution. So it's pretty good quality. It's not the same as like survey grade, but it's pretty good. So I would also encourage the planning department to release a more like high resolution map. So you guys and also the public can see what those gulches look like. And what else? Oh, so
1 minute.
so the actual boundaries of a gulch is based on physical features, where you can see like the bank go up and then reach kind of a crest where it transitions from like the interior of the gulch to flat land. And that's also based on LiDAR. And then as far as like the buffer, whether it's 100 foot or whatever, I think that would be up to the CPAC, and that's what they decided on is
Seconds.
100 foot. So that is my testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the testifier, Commissioner Digos?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony today. Can you clarify two things? One, just the definition of a gulch, sort of how you described it. Is that a standard definition? Is that something the group that did the survey decided to come up with?
It's based on what I could find on the internet regarding like studies in other places where they defined like a watershed. A watershed is basically the area that drains into a river or a stream or a gulch. And the area of the watershed is, you can measure it in acres. So like, for example, the entire area that drains into like the Mississippi River is like thousands and thousands of square miles. And then if you look at a small stream, like one of the major gulches in Kihei, you would be looking at a watershed that goes all the way up to like upcountry and all the way to the ridge of Haleakala, and that's going to be like thousands and thousands of acres. And if you look at a smaller drainage way, it'll be less acres. So like I'd set the cutoff at 5 or 10 acres, whichever it was. And use that as like the cutoff. So if it's too small to drain, like if a drainage ray only drains like one lot, because of the shape of that lot, then that's not enough to consider it a gulch.
Okay, thank you. And then I know that you said the 100-foot buffer was sort of arbitrarily picked by the CPAC. Can you discuss what the importance of the buffer is and just clarify what that buffer does to the Gulch watershed area?
Sure. So basically, I think the main reason to protect the gulches is like ecological, to protect plants and animals that might be using that gulch as habitat, but then also to reduce risk of flooding downstream. And so that's a major issue here in Kihei, where because of land use changes up in upcountry and like above the highway, there's increased flooding and it creates mud and it costs a huge amount of money to clean up. And a lot of that could be avoided just by having buffers. And I think 100 foot. I seem to recall there were proposals to make it like 200 feet, and then some people wanted less, like 50, and I think it ended up being 100 foot as like a compromise number where it's not like a massive amount of land, and they would still have enough space to develop in most of the larger parcels. But it would provide enough buffer to reduce that flood risk and reduce the amount of mud going into the gulches, and also have like open space, which is also nice. Like if if you're buying a house, it's kind of like in Maui Meadows, there's a lot of properties that have a gulch through them, and it's a nice like open space that they have. So
Okay, thank
hopefully
you.
that
So,
explains.
yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions from the commission? I do have a follow-up question. I'm making sure I heard you correctly. So you were one of the people that helped create this map?
Yes.
Okay. And you, let's see, I'm just checking my notes. So this was based on like depression that drains into an area that is 5 acres or larger?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it was 5 or 10. It's been like a couple years now.
Okay. And that was chosen based on, like, did you look at any like USGS survey? I'm just wondering what the data of this is based on.
So the way that was created in, I guess I probably can't go into too much detail, but in GIS software, you can do a lot of this analysis if you have like elevation data, which the elevation data we had was from state LiDAR. And so when you do that, you can set up a minimum watershed. So I set that number of acres and then it created the lines. And those lines are what I used to define where I was drawing the gulches. And that was in addition to earlier work that was done by previous GIS folks. And then stuff that happened after I left was also a part of that. But it's basically like a minimum you set. And if you had set like 1 acre, for example, then it would create lines everywhere. So it's kind of like an automated thing based on the actual data. It's not like a judgment call where you're drawing 5 acres or you're saying this is the 5 acres I want to define. It's all in like the computer based on the actual data.
Based on like the topographic data
Yes, that's
available
correct.
on GIS.
Yep.
Okay. And did you like connect these with any like waterway data, or is this just based on the topo?
I think the waterway data that we had was for like major gulches, and so we use those as gulch names for like those named the really big gulches.
Okay, I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you. Commissioner Digos.
Just real quick, because a lot of people reference the poor resolution. Is any of that data publicly accessible, the higher res on maps online?
I don't think the actual data is accessible.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for, Commissioner, sorry.
Just
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, don't worry, go ahead.
Yeah, one clarifying question. We're all looking at 3.17 and we're talking about gulches, but are the gulches the green lines? Is that?
I don't have it in front of me, and I can't remember which colors were which. I think there are lines, and then there are also polygons.
Okay, maybe I'm looking at the wrong.
I'm just going by memory.
I guess just to verbalize, Commissioner Kealoha, what you're looking at for everybody online. It looks like in the booklet that we have, figure 3.17 is named Area of Stability and Gulches. And the legend calls out roads, streams, ocean, SMCP boundary, building footprints, and open space. So perhaps the legend should be updated.
Okay, so the assumption is that the green and what is labeled open space is gulch, I guess.
The open space would be whatever is the buffer. So if it's 100 foot, then 100 foot around each gulch would be open space, I think, is the idea of those maps.
In that case, we might need a legend for this map so that it clearly explains what it is showing.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the testifier? Commissioner Dicos, are you raising your hand? Okay, just checking. Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else signed up to testify?
Yes, next person is Lucien Dine.
Aloha, this is Lucienne Dine, and nice to see you folks all again. I've mentioned many times that I served on the initial review for the General Plan Advisory Committee when the whole of Maui was being evaluated and we were looking at, gulches and development areas and so forth. And so it might be helpful for you folks to have a little perspective from that process. We very, very much hoped in places like West Maui and South Maui that have a lot of development planned and some very, very pronounced gulches that do carry a lot of water during rain events, that there could be significant buffers, greenways, green spaces, open spaces along both sides of the gulches. So this isn't a new concept. It's been brought over from those discussions. The West Maui Community Plan, it might be helpful for folks to know, does have language that asks that I think it's at least 100-foot buffer on all major gulches or all gulches, because they're pretty much all major, the ones that were identified there. And developments in that area like Pulelehua shows those wide buffers. There's an affordable housing development that's actually cooperating with this rather than fighting back and saying, oh, we can't do this and we need it different. They're realizing it will help protect the property values there. So just keeping that in mind, we're trying to work with nature here. We don't know if 100-year storms are going to become like 200-year storms, 500-year storms, and we don't know if they're going to happen, 3 times a year or twice a year. So by allowing this extra wiggle room, nature can change the course of how the gulch runs, and straight lines are never nature's usual course. So it's nice to have room for gulch shapes to shift. And the idea of case by case, I mean, my guess is that's kind of like a stall technique. We should have an overall policy that's clear, that says what we value. And if we value safety and if we value cooperation with nature, this is a good policy. that's why it was adopted in the West Maui Community Plan. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you again.
Mahalo.
Is there anybody else signed up to testify?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's CJ. From Maui.
Okay. CJ from Maui, if you are online, please unmute yourself.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm hiking in a right now on South. I do like the thought of treating them case by case. Lahaina is real easy. We know the agriculture that was done there. We know the Auai system that was done there. We know how they irrigated and divert to Mexico. So they have better ways of managing their gulches. More data on that. I think 150 feet is nuts. That's a lot. I do like the 100-foot one, but even that, I think that's a lot. And I just came out of 4 named major gulches on the state maps, and the only native species, well, there are none. There's Evo, Dryopterus, but other than that, it's all invasive species and non-native species that are having a way to grow seed and be washed downstream and plant themselves in the lowlands. So I guess my testimony is that each area should be treated case by case. Each riverbed or gulch, whatever you want to call them, should be monitored individually. I've been on different projects and in different spaces where we know 30 years ago water used to run, and we've been out in the rain, not on the computer, and we've proven even USGS wrong with the amount of flow, putting transects in the riverbeds. That is not the amount of flow that comes on different types of storms. So having a field crew to be out there and get the actual data is important before you make any types of big decisions like this. Yeah, I think that's it. It's hot out here.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the testifier? Commissioner Digos.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. You seem very knowledgeable about the gulches and the environmental. So my question, you said the 100-foot, well, you said 150 was much, 100 was maybe okay. If you were to err on the side of caution, for example, protecting environment versus development, is there a danger in being over conservative? And then you could have, if somebody really had an issue with the boundary, they could then come in for an easement versus, so that way you would have a protected gulch buffer in general, and then those where it really didn't apply, that would be an easement. Is there a concern to be more on the conservative side?
Yeah, for me there is, because for me I think we lack stewardship for these spaces and places. When the fires, I know everybody talks about Lahaina, I'm switching it to Kula. When the fires came to Kula in August 8th, over a year ago, those gulches were the way that the fire was able to spread. Because, and I believe this, because there wasn't houses, I talked about this at CPAC, the places that the ranches had machinery near the areas and that it was accessible, they were able to kind of corral the fire, keep it off of their lands. But the places that were unkept, because people just can't afford to be out there all the time, or whatever the reasons are, that helped to spread the fire. Besides that, I do think having more areas of non-native species, like and deer, and besides the plants, right? For those to proliferate and take over our native species, that's the biggest concern for me.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Chef.
Any further questions for the testifier? I do have a follow-up question to make sure I heard you correctly. You're saying that some channels had streams like 30 years ago, but now they're not running anymore. And so we don't fully know now how water will run when it does rain a lot. Was that what you said?
Yeah, yeah. As different things happen, the topography changes in different areas. Different types of plants are in different spaces, even in the spaces that people aren't in. We see the same amount of water will fall in an uplands area, and will travel down different rivulets to get to a bigger gulch, and then changing their course. And as the testifier prior to me said, the rivers change over time, and um, they've done that to the rivulets. What used to be rivulets are now, I would consider, gulches.
Okay, so this would be a reason why projects should be reviewed on a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
Okay, and then your note about, talking about the buffers and the invasive species that are in these gulches now. So are you saying there should be buffers, but they should be like restored with native species?
Oh, that's the dream, eradicate the non-native species, especially the invasive ones. But I'm not sure that this island has the ability to do that with the few hands that are willing to be out there and the few nurseries that we have.
Okay,
I think Kula
gotcha.
Community Project is doing great in their gulches.
So that would be, are you saying an example to consider for South Maui?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
And all gulches.
Okay, so I guess, have you seen this map that we're talking about?
I have.
This figure 3.17 in the plan?
Well, I read through the entire South Maui Community Plan. I'm not sure exactly which one. If you pull it up on screen, is that possible?
I don't know. Staff, is that? Okay. I don't know that we can do that, but maybe when we get to that point, you can come and testify again on the map and the gulches that are reflected there. But I think that's all the questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, Marlo.
Oh, wait, hold on. Commissioner Dicos.
Thank you, Chair. So your questioning remind me of another question. So just to go back, trying to understand the balance, because we're talking about mitigating the impacts of development going up to the gulch edge, which has its own impacts of runoff and mud and all that, versus what you described where you have non-native open spaces that can transmit fire and invasive species. So it sounds like you're leaning on better to build all the way up to the edge. That's a lesser of two evils.
Um, maybe not build all the way to the edge. A testifier prior to the last mentioned about what is that place, Mocha of the Wailea Fire Station? Shucks, I know he said the name. There's a subdivision above the Wailea Fire Station that they have rivulets and old riverbeds and gulches running through their yards, but because it is in their yards, they manicure it themselves. Um, Maui Meadows, that was it. So I think if there's a green space, which might take water in South Maui, or a manicured, maintained space. But if you keep out all types of, I guess, development, then there's those problems will continue to be there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, thank you again for your testimony. Anybody else signed up to testify?
That's the end of the list.
Okay, last call for testimony. If you wish to testify, please notify staff in the chat. Otherwise, we're going once, going twice. Okay, testimony's closed for this evening. But on the note of testimony, I know we got a batch of written testimony emailed to us at 7:08 this morning. I just want to make sure that our commissioners have seen those and have had a chance to review. And if not, maybe we can take 5 minutes and then we can come back.
Hey, Chair.
Oh, hello?
Hey, sorry, I was trying to figure out how I go and raise my hand.
Oh,
I
do you
know
want to
you guys-
testify?
Yeah, I wanted to testify, but if you guys would close it.
Oh, no, it's okay. If you didn't know how to raise your hand online, that's okay. We will give you some grace. I'm gonna let you testify. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's not gonna be long. Yeah, aloha. This Vernon Kalani call. You guys can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, right on. Thanks. So I just got to hear CJ, so I'm pretty whatever CJ was talking, I wish I caught more of that. So I embrace some of the monologue provided by a colleague because you know, someone informed me that my name was dropped on the 150 buffer zone. For this is the Pilani Promenade, yeah, Chair. So
That mentioned, yes.
yeah, so I supported that. Just like for the record, I supported that, but I supported that because you know, holistically, organically, Kanakally, you know, we always looking to create more buffers for mitigation. But like any of our CPAC members, each and every one of us, even when the plan was done, you know, we're always scratching our head. I could have done this, I should have done that, because we're not planners. You know, we reflect back on. So with this one parcel, yeah, I did support the 150, but also look back on, you know, the community like that be res, yeah. That's the idea. But when you look at the neighboring development across and north of that, you know, I'm looking at consistency. That's for me. You know, this after the fact. So how that could be consistent in design and what looks appropriate in that corridor consistently to the high school and through the as you head south, yeah, on Pilani Highway. So I just wanted to say that, you know, if the community supporting res there, that would impact the res project. Which, you know, I think we can do something there, res or mixed use.
1
because
minute.
oh, my time's still up.
No, you got 1 minute.
Okay. So in thinking like one, you know, if that was my land, you know, oh shucks, I like make use of as much as possible and conform with rules, regs, and whatever needs to be done if you're going to do res over there. And res would make sense too, yeah, because we got to put family kikis in that school. We no more too much places to opportunities to have res and start putting some bodies in that school because the enrollment there is low. But anyway, yeah, I supported that 150, but I think we gotta put that back. Only because if we're gonna make that res, we should make them res as much as possible. Mahalo.
Mahalo for your testimony. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Ducos.
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify, just one clarification, the 150 buffer on the highway, you're saying put it back. What do you mean by put it back?
What was it? Like 40 or 30? I don't know.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
that was the suggestion. So somebody suggested 40.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because if you look at it, I mean, I know I'm a developer, but you know, that's a lot of buffer space. I mean, it's up the highway. It's up. It should go up to the high. And just to know, you know, my thinking changed way after the fact of support 150 as a
Yeah.
seat. Yeah. Okay.
My other question, because I think you referred to the previous testifier, which was talking about the gulch buffers, not necessarily the Pialani Highway. So I just wanted to clarify
Oh,
that was 100-foot buffer for the gulches, and you saying you agree to get rid of that, or?
oh no, I missed that part. Sorry, I missed that part. I only caught CJ. I didn't know CJ was talking 150 off that gulch, off the gulch side. Sorry. So
Okay.
support that? Did he?
Just what is your, I think you have a lot of experience from Field of Vernon, I think you are, with watersheds. And do you have thoughts on the 100-foot buffer to protect the gulches?
Yeah, if it's managed properly, I mean, if there's some invasive plants like kiawe trees, I mean, if it's on that buffer, I mean, if we pull it out, let's say we remove it, we pull it out, what does that leave? Yeah, for mitigation for runoff and shape the gulches as we know it today. So the gulches change all the time, as CJ was sharing. I mean, it changes, and putting the buffers as we had put in the CPAC plan. The idea was to keep development away from the gulches, yeah, and then plant. So just one example, Mark. So with Kalani Hako'i High School, and I work closely with that school. You know, we like plant near the gulches. You know, that's the idea, and keep development away from impacting more towards the gulch, mainly from surface runoff. And by adding the buffers, sometimes a lot of times the buffer help saturate inside development, if that makes sense. I'm explaining that okay, Mark? So if we have 100 feet buffers from a development, the runoff from the development that goes through towards the gulches, that buffer can help mitigate, hold water and slow water in the ground before it gets to the gulches, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions for the testifier? Commissioner Kealoha.
Hi, I'm wondering if you might know this answer to the question, because Mark mentioned that you know these watersheds. I'm just wondering, do these, when we get these really big storms, especially like the Kona storms that flood Kihei, do these gulches fill with water? Like, do they overflow?
The gulches?
Yeah. Like,
No,
I guess my thought is like, well, if we build too close to them, then are the houses in jeopardy of flooding?
so this is my mindset. Let's say we build, if you know Kulani Hakoi, and you go down, I mean, if you know where Pilani Highway, below Pilani Highway, and you look at the Betso project, you look at the Canoleo apartments, and you look at those homes that's close to the gulch, and the home's not going to be Makai of Pilani Highway. You know, the county right now waiting, you know, they already approved to dig out Kulani Hakoi Gulch. Makai or Pilani Highway all the way down to South Kihei Road, they approve to dig up that section of the gulch, bank to bank, open up the original drainage way, and they're gonna dig 12 feet from 12 feet. And And that's a lot of silt that comes from Malca, right? And what going to happen when that all get done, if the water keeps running, you're going to get erosion yeah, on the embankments. So that all going to come wide eventually through time. And even Malca, Pilani Highway with Kulani Hakoi, they running more on I just gonna term it crazy because there's not enough vegetation, yeah, to hold water on on the land. Everything just go, all the water from north south always ends up in the gulch too fast, too quickly. So that's going to shape, yeah, the gulch. It's gonna change the shape, the contour. So if you build up to the gulches, and then for upside on Malka on the ranch side, above side, I don't think they would build close to the gulch, knowingly that it's gonna come wide and go reshape itself, the gulches from runoff and flow. So downside Makai side, below Pilani Highway, Kulani Hakoi doesn't run its course under the bridge down South Key Road anymore. Kulani Hakoi is Kaunulu Road. And that's the flow of Kulani Hakoi on Kaunulu Road, on the paved road, because that entire section of that gulch is 12 feet high of silt through the years that comes from Malka. So having buffers on side of the gulch will support whether it's a development or a project as a safety barrier, because it will come wide. It will grow on its own, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Any further questions for the testifier? Seeing none. Thank you again for.
Just one quick one, but we need.
Oh, sorry, I cannot let
Oh, that's
you
okay. No, that's okay.
testify. You can come to the next meeting though.
Yeah, if can. Okay. Thanks, yeah.
Yep, thanks again.
Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha. Is there anybody else who would like to testify? If you didn't know how to use the chat, you can just unmute yourself and give us a holler. Okay, seeing none. Commissioners, we got written testimony emailed to us a few times today. I just want to make sure you've been able to see that because we've been in meetings all the way up until now. So, have you had a chance to read that, or shall we give you a few minutes to look over those? Commissioner Dicos?
Can we get 5 minutes? And I can
Sure.
just make sure I've seen those.
Yeah. We'll take a break. How about we take a break until 4:15? So just to let you know that Gino emailed us at like 7 something, 8 something, 11 something, and 2 something today with written testimony. Commissioner Keloha?
But the email at 2:41, we can just access that, and that has the whole list. That will have everything, even from the previous emails. I'm just asking to clarify.
Maybe.
Okay, because
Oh, if you go on the agenda. I
yeah,
think if you go on the agenda, you can click on the documents received after posting. And I think that has all of the ones for today's meeting.
thank you.
Okay, so we'll give you 6 minutes and we'll come back at 4:15. Okay, recess until then. Okay, Commissioner Lindsay, are you there? Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to our September 10, 2024 Maui Planning Commission meeting on the South Maui Community Plan. Everybody's had a chance to review the written testimony we received today. And then we can continue our examination of Section 2, the policy framework. At the last meeting, we left off at policy 2.2.37, but I have a note here from the planning department that we have updated language recommendations as requested previously for items 2.2.11, 12, and 16 to be reviewed. I think we can take those up. Do you have something on those?
You want to start with the ones that go, you want to go back first?
Yeah, updated language recommendations. Director?
Yes, Chair. I'm going to pitch it over to our long range team to walk us through the next steps. So the updated language recommendations for page 35, policy 2.2.11. The Maui Planning Commission requested clearer language for the last sentence. So it says, support the preservation of the Kihei boat ramp and the adjacent undeveloped area as valuable assets to the region. The northern portion of the property, including the dryland habitat and paths, must maintain its undeveloped character and remain as open space. That's the updated language. It was just moving where open space is because it was a little confusing.
Okay.
And this is on page 6 of the Maui Planning Commission recommendations section 2. That is part of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Any comments on that? Please see thumbs up from Commissioner Dikos, thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay, head nodding from Commissioner Kealoha, and thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Okay, thank you for that update on 2.2.11. Now 2.2.12.
Maui Planning Commission requested clearer language for the end of this sentence. Include native trees and flora that are appropriate for the microclimate in parks along trails and greenways to provide shade, beauty, and reduce sediment runoff, and encourage the preservation of native seed banks throughout the community. That is changing establishment to preservation.
Commissioners, comments? Thumbs up from Commissioner Dikos, thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson, thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha and Commissioner Lindsay. Beautiful. Okay. So 2.2.16, it says has updated language, but we also flagged it for additional discussion.
This one you wanted us to work with DPW to provide language. So the Maui Planning Commission requested Planning Department, DPW to provide language to include roadways and parcels beyond cul-de-sacs. Acquire parcels that provide opportunities to improve the connectivity of the transportation network, including roadways, greenways, and multi-use paths.
And that was in consultation with Public Works?
That was in consultation with Public Works.
Nice. Commissioners, questions, comments? Thumbs up? Okay, thumbs up from Commissioner Dikos, Vice Chair. Commissioner Lindsay, Commissioner Kealoha, you have a question? Or thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up, everybody. Good job. Beautiful. Okay. Oops, wrong sheet. So we had also flagged for additional discussion 2.2.21. And we have testimony on this.
Is Hopper still on?
I think we have Kayla Burrow is on. Yes, so policy 2.2.21. we had flagged for additional discussion. You're on mute, Commissioner Lindsay. Are you asking something? Okay. You say we're asking Corp Counsel? I think Mr.
Hey, Chair,
Hopper's.
I'm here for another 10 minutes or so, but was there?
This is 2.2.21, which was the credits may not be used. I believe you replied to this in the email. If you
Yeah,
would like-
just in writing. I mean, I think the department had proposed edits that I think make the policy okay. The issue with this one, I mean, there's a few issues. One is that there's a workforce housing ordinance that applies county-wide, and there's a community plan, which is an ordinance passed by council. And the workforce housing requirements are also an ordinance passed by council. So I think the council is going to have to decide if it wants to change the workforce housing requirements to require units to be constructed in the same community plan area as the development, or that it doesn't want to use credits, that doesn't want to allow credits to be used. That's something the council really needs to look at in that ordinance, because the community plan would apply a force and effective lot in some cases, but it would not necessarily be sufficient to enact that requirement throughout South Maui, and certainly not throughout the county unless that change is made. You could potentially have inconsistent requirements where you'd have an ordinance saying you can use it anywhere in the county, regardless of where the development is, versus the plan policy that would say you could use it within the South Maui community plan, and the plan would only apply in some cases and not all cases. And for the council, it wouldn't really make much sense for them to, if they are in favor of making those changes, then by all means, it can look at making those changes in the ordinance. One change it may not be able to make, though, is there are certain kinds of credits, DHHL credits, for example, that state law requires that the county recognize, even if they're transferred to other developers. So even in changing its ordinance, the county may be limited. So the department had made some edits to this that I think would make it acceptable. But I think the most important thing is that if there's going to be a change in the requirement that does not allow units to be built, that requires units to be built in the same community plan area as the development, which again might be a good idea, that those changes would need to happen in the ordinance, and doing it in the community plan wouldn't necessarily effectuate that and would create an inconsistency. So I hope that makes sense.
Commissioner Lindsay?
So we should remove credits may not be used because it is inconsistent.
Well, credits may not be used, would conflict with state law in some cases. But if perhaps there's a way to communicate this, you're making a recommendation to council. If the commission believes that credits should be prohibited to the extent allowed to be prohibited, I think you could communicate that to the county council to say that ordinance should be changed to prohibit that use to the extent allowed. Again, the county may still have to recognize certain DHHL and other credits if state law says that, but you may be able to be more restrictive than the current ordinance is. The problem is just putting that in the plan doesn't really effectuate that. That should be done through the ordinance as well.
Commissioner DeGos.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the intent here, obviously, affordable housing. This is not to prevent affordable housing. There's clearly an issue with the credit system, and that's why it was flagged here. So, sounded like Corp Counsel just mentioned, to the extent allowed might be added to the end of that. And of course, that they want it to be completely, the council has the option to create law to make it 100% non-allowable, where we could just add that language and be okay.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, go
There. I
ahead.
just wanted to clarify that Corporation Council supports the proposed revision provided by the department, which is to encourage affordable housing obligations to be met within the boundaries of the community plan subarea period, and just delete the reference to credits may not be used. And then he added, if the planning commission wants to remove the whole credits out of chapter 2.96, then that could be a separate recommendation if that's the path that they want to go down. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay?
Can somebody explain the credit system quickly?
Excuse me, Chair. There. So that's administered by the Department of Housing. So I think we might misstate if we tried to explain it. I know I can't, so I'm sorry.
I don't suppose we have anybody from Department of Housing online.
I can give it a go
Okay.
in that. So developers, when they build affordable housing, let's say they build 100% affordable housing, they're required to build 25. The ones that they're not required to build affordable housing, I think it's 2-for-1, they get a building credit. Now, so a builder will build a development, because if they sell those credits, they make money. That's how they make their money. So it's subsidized by that. So study some building before you kill the builders. I'm not saying that, like I said at our last meeting, you can't live underneath a credit. That being said, you have to revise the whole system, because right now, if you just said, oh, you take those out, you're going to kill affordable housing, because the big developers won't do them because there's no money in it. So you have to understand the economics and what that was put in there for. That makes sense to you. So I'd say eliminate the credits right now that they cannot be used. Eliminate that part. If you want to dissect 2.96, that's state legislation too, state and county. So it's a lot longer than you think. So at this point, I think we should just eliminate that part. That was the county's recommendation as well.
Thank you, Chair. The county's recommendation was to encourage affordable housing obligations to be met within the boundaries, and then yes, to eliminate that wording about credits may not be used. Thank you.
Yeah, it makes legal sense.
Director, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think that we heard again and again. So we heard this in West Maui. We heard it again in South Maui from developers. Exactly what Vice Chair Thompson mentioned, that there's a myriad ways to get affordable housing, and credits is one of those ways. And if the commission would like, we could ask Director Mitchell to join us to have a deeper conversation about credits. But as our Corporation Council suggested, this might be a solution to accommodate the issue, and still allow those things, these myriad ways to work together to create affordable housing.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Can I ask the department why you suggest we not obligate developers to have their housing obligations in the community plan area that they're building? Like what? Because that would limit affordable housing. Can you just talk me through your reasoning on that?
Chair, this is Michael Hopper.
Okay.
The department could clarify their position maybe on that as a policy issue. My thought on that was not that it's not a good idea. It's just that you have an ordinance right now that says something contrary to that. So both should be changed, and just doing it in the plan creates an inconsistency. So I had an issue with the language, but saying it differently, like, letting council know you should change this ordinance, or have that as an item for them to change the ordinance to eliminate that, or to require that be in the area, should be done, but just, I didn't want to create the impression that putting it in the plan and then leaving that conflict in there was okay. And so I just wanted to make sure that got reconciled. As far as the overall policy in doing that, it may well be a very good idea, but that's the strictly legal issue that I saw from that.
I see. Okay, thank you. I guess like it would depend on whether or not like where we stand on this, because do we want to encourage, I see that problem. Do we want to, we could, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I'm still not sure which way I need to go, but could we encourage that? Well, no, it wouldn't even make sense to encourage that credits not be used because that doesn't do anything. It's encourage. Never mind. I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry.
One thing we could do would be, put in the suggested changes from the department and then attach, comments or a memo to the council to say, consider revising 2.96 in tandem. Yeah,
I
but
just don't know about building.
right. So in tandem with this policy in the plan, consider revising 2.96.
That's a big undertaking.
It is, but just to put in that it's been discussed by this body. Commissioner Dicos?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, if the credit system was working, we'd have encourage more credits, that there's a reason it's in here. And it sounds like we don't have the capacity to address the ordinance to fix that. So I agree with what you said, at least let the planning, the county council members know that this is an issue was raised by the South Maui community, but we don't have the power to do anything about it. You may want to address it. I don't think just ignoring the credit issue, because if it's not working and it's beneficial to the developer and not necessarily to affordable housing, then it's a loophole that we don't address.
Okay, how does everybody feel about adopting the revised language and adding that note to the council? Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Tico said yes. Okay, thumbs down from Vice Chair. Commissioner Lindsay, comments?
I think they need to be a lot more thorough about it. I don't know if they are able to or just like, kind of I'd rather them not blanket it out. Like for me personally, I don't want to live in Kihei, so I would want them to use their credits in other areas of the island. Because then I could possibly get an affordable house in Wailuku or upcountry. But so there's that. But also I don't stand for everybody. So it also I appreciate, I understand the distance from work and walking, if you can walk to work, you can get shorter distances. So I feel like that is already a big undertaking that they should probably self motivate themselves to go under. Maybe just say, hey, it was mentioned. Not much more than that, because they're trying to get affordable houses out there too. Like that's actively their jobs. So like they already know that people are talking about it.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, so to break the log jam here, perhaps the change, it seems like I don't see disagreement on the proposed change from the department. What I do see disagreement on is a supplemental memorandum to council. I think you need some additional information before you choose to do that. And so I would advise the Planning Commission to invite Director Mitchell to talk a little bit about the tax credit piece. We're happy to bring him back. You don't have to, you can move forward with this without having that piece done. So if you would like, we can coordinate with Department of Housing to bring those folks in to help. Is that beneficial? Yeah.
Commissioner Dicos?
Yeah, I was gonna add that so the assumption is that it's not working, but I've got no data in front of me to tell me how many projects have been successful under the credits versus not. So it would be helpful to have a reference to actual data rather than just assuming it's not working because it was proposed. So I like that.
Yeah, it is incorrect assumption.
Okay, so for now, shall we adopt the language and then flag this for having Department of Housing come in? Department got that? Okay. Awesome. The next one we had flagged to come back to was 2.2.26, but this is also on affordable housing. So we can flag that for Department of Housing as well. And then 2.2.31 and 3.4, we had asked for input from Department of OEV Resources.
They're looking at it, but they have not replied.
Okay. And then 2.2.35 and 3.7.
This one is specifically regarding which one, 3.5 and 3.7?
Yeah.
2.2.35 was about shoreline access.
Chair Thayer, so from Corporation Council, they shared with us that as for the shoreline access language, such access cannot be required unless the development's impact on the shoreline access is proportional to the access required. So Corporation Council suggests adding in the additional language in the second sentence. So when, and then the word new is bracketed for deletion, development is proposed, require public access to the, and the is underlined to be added, to the shoreline area, and then including areas, which is underlined, currently privatized by gates and walls to the extent permitted by law. And the words to the extent permitted by law is underlined as additions. So we would read that when new development is proposed, require public access to the shoreline area, including areas currently privatized by gates and walls to the extent permitted by law. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Tikos.
Thank you, Chair. Can you clarify to, what is the trigger? So if somebody applies for an SMA permit to do a repair or something, this is new development. So this would not
Well, the
apply to-
suggested language took out new, so it would just say when development is proposed.
Okay, can you tell me, explain the trigger, like what's the balance between the impact versus the accessibility? I'm confused by that.
So for the nexus, that's going to be assessed by the planners, but there are some court cases that describe those. Ones that are mentioned most commonly are Nolan and Dolan, these two cases that have come up, and I think they were mentioned in the testimony. But Corporation Council, I don't know, Mike, if you have more detail on that. Thank you.
I think Caleb Rowe is on now.
Caleb, sorry, thanks.
I'm sorry, and thanks for having me on. So you're absolutely right. The Nolan-Dolan test is a proportionality requirement that basically says when you do have kind of conditions on developments, they need to be proportional to the impacts that are creating the needs for them. And so, the exact trigger is, I agree with what was just said, kind of going to have to be done on a sort of case by case basis to make sure that it is proportional to any impacts it is going to have on public right to access.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about our district out here, West Maui. There's no shoreline access for miles, but there's SMA permit applications over and over for repairs to foundations, to seawalls, to sinkholes. When would there be an assessment of, okay, you're going to have to provide some shoreline access here?
So my understanding is that if the department in reviewing it does notice that the project is going to have an effect on existing access to the public shoreline, that's kind of when they would start looking to it. So that would be the trigger.
Okay, so if there's no access to start with, it's not going to increase in access, so there's no further impact.
Right. If it's not going to have an impact on the access that's there, then it wouldn't necessarily trigger that sort of review and that sort of condition by the department.
Okay, all right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, just the trigger for all of the policies that you're looking at is in an application. So we'll be checking to see if applications are consistent with the policies in the South Maui Community Plan. And this is one of those policies we would be checking it against. So if it's not consistent, we would recommend changes to the project to follow that. So for SMA, that's the trigger, just the application.
Okay, but you would need to be reducing access in your application in order to have, if you already don't have access, if you already have total in access, there's no increased in access. So you'd be okay.
The state law, I believe, is every 1,500 feet, there's supposed to be shoreline access. So if there's shoreline access within that area, then it probably wouldn't trigger it. But if you have a whole bunch of development and it's being blocked, then it should trigger it if it's blocked for a lot farther than that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with the proposed change to the language, how do we feel about that? To that second sentence of 2.2.35. Thumbs up from Commissioner DeCos, I see. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Thumbs up from Vice Chair. Commissioner Kealoha. Thumbs up. Okay. Thank you for working on those edits. The last one we had flagged from last time was 2.2.37. Which is about,
This was a carryover from the last plan.
okay.
Let me see if I have what Jordan commented on that.
Okay.
I mean, the director. The director of Public Works. That is the one I did not.
Our staff planner is checking on this.
All right. So I guess he has more questions. Does further development as stated in the policy refer to development that is approved in the plan or development not contemplated by the plan? The commission should be clear so the agencies interpreting these policies are in alignment. After the development submits their plans, then we assess the infrastructure demand to determine the gap in service, which guides the needed infrastructure improvements. This isn't an evaluation that occurs beforehand. So I guess that's the biggest answer is that last statement. It's that at the time that development is being proposed is when the infrastructure assessment would be done to know what the gaps are.
Vice Chair.
Sure, I'd recommend to take it out altogether. It's arbitrary, capricious. There's no matrix. Literally, if there's a pothole in the road, you can't drive down the road. So it shouldn't be in there at all.
Okay. Any other commissioners want to weigh in? I think this is the one that we said it's been in the plan from before and it hasn't done anything. So it's not an effective policy. Okay, Vice Chair is moving to take it out. Anybody else? I think in general, anytime we're reviewing projects, we're making sure that all the infrastructure is going in properly anyway, so it's taken care of by the review process without having to refer to this policy. So commissioners online, how do you feel? Commissioner Dicos?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we make decisions based on infrastructure already being there. I think we're already beyond that, but I don't think there's much teeth in this to decide what infrastructure is actually in place. I don't know how you would, so I'd be fine taking it out.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lindsay, Commissioner Kealoha? No comments, Commissioner Lindsay, is that the head shake? Don't care, can take it out, okay. Commissioner Kealoha?
Yeah, but just to be clear, I do support that we need infrastructure before we develop, even though we're taking out the policy that says we need infrastructure before we develop. But I'm okay with that since that's what we do and it holds no weight clearly because it's been in there for a long time.
Okay, thank you. All right, we can strike that one. Beautiful. Now we move past where we were at our last meeting. So department had proposed revisions to 2.2.40. Department.
The intent of this policy is to enact stricter water requirements on hotel development. However, requiring new development to be water neutral would be difficult to implement. Proponents of development could instead be encouraged to be water neutral. The department recommends the following change, deleting require and put encourage new hotels and expansion of existing hotels to be water neutral.
So this is a require versus encourage. Thumbs up from Vice Chair. Commissioner Dicos?
So I think hotels are the greatest demand for water. I think that's been an issue and concerns, especially West Maui. We're having trouble doing affordable housing because all the water is redirected to resorts, hotels. So encouraging, I don't feel really does anything. Requires definitely strict. water neutral is definitely a high bar. So I might choose the director's words of to the extent practicable, just maybe soften it a bit. But I don't feel that encouraged. I think we always encourage them to do, water conservation, and based on what I've seen, it doesn't go very far.
Any other commissioners want to weigh in? So you're saying, Commissioner Dicos, it would stay require, but at the end it would be to the extent practicable.
And the reason, we've had this discussion on many items with the require versus encourage. And by requiring, it forces them to defend why they're not doing it. So we say we tried, we penciled out all the reuse possibility. We worked with DOH to try to get water neutral. They wouldn't allow us to reuse our gray water. It forces them to actually attempt to do it. And then we can, we have the discretion to say, well, okay, we applaud you for your efforts, but there's only so much you can do. As opposed to encourage, that's what we get as well. That's not required by law. But, planning department doesn't require that. That's usually the answer when we ask for how much beyond code have you done. Well, that's not required. So I don't think encourage will advance the intent here, personally.
Okay, Director?
Planning is fine with that shift.
Okay. Other commissioners? A thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. So this would be required to the extent practicable. Okay, thumbs up from everybody. All right. Unless anyone has any flags, the next one from the department is 2.2.45.
I forgot I had to read. The intent of this policy is to require outdoor lighting to be designed with consideration for humans, native species, and the ability to see the stars. The department recommends removing the reference to the Maui County Code so that the policy remains in effect if the code is changed. If new development and redevelopment projects, outdoor lighting shall be designed to provide the minimum illumination required to respond to human needs, protect native species, and preserve the dark skies. That just removed by the Maui County or outdoor lighting ordinance.
Okay. Commissioners? Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Commissioner Kealoha, thoughts, comments? Thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. Okay. All right. Thank you. So provide the minimum illumination to respond to human needs is how it will read now. Okay. Thank you. 2.2.47. I just want to say I like 2.2.46 very much. More of that, please.
Policy 2.2.47, the intent of this policy is to require more input from the South Maui community via the South Maui Advisory Committee. However, the Maui Planning Commission cannot be required to send proposals to an advisory body for review. Also, design guidelines must be adopted by the Maui County to be actionable in the community plan. The department recommends the following language. Encourage the Maui Planning Commission to request the South Maui Planning Advisory Committee to review and determine support with conditions, or no support on all development and subdivisions in South Maui that come before the Maui Planning Commission. This review must include the assessment of proposed project against any county adopted design guidelines if applicable. So it was taking out require and replacing with encourage, replacing shall with must, and changing the appropriate communities design guidelines to any county adopted design guidelines if applicable.
Vice Chair.
Boy, we'll want my input here, won't we? So mine's a big NO on this. When it's duplicitous, it's contrary to our charter commission.
Somebody online needs to mute themselves.
Maybe they're responding. Anyway.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it's in our charter, it says do not have duplicated government actions, and this clearly is, and they should be here. This costs us $300,000 a year, and we don't even use them. It's a waste of money. They should be here. If you want to be part of the Planning Commission, be part of the Planning Commission. Don't start another government. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners want to weigh in?
I threw it in hot.
Can I ask, Commissioner Thompson, so are you suggesting we strike the encourage thing, the entire thing, or are you just saying we go with the encourage?
I'm saying we eliminate the whole 2.2.47.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Dicos, followed by Commissioner Lindsay.
I'm not sure I totally follow, because when we just eliminate the CPAC process as well, and
No,
so
the-
there's obviously some duplication.
You're not paying
No?
attention.
I'm not paying attention.
CPAC is a separate, that's a separate process.
Right, but they develop the community plan and then we review the community plan. So why wouldn't we just develop the community plan? If we're gonna
That is,
skip-
well, director can speak to that, but the community plan development is a entirely different effort and process and division of the planning department than most of what we have here. But I'll let the director speak to this.
Certainly. So to be clear, the policy references the South Maui Planning Advisory Committee, which is not a thing, but South Maui Advisory Committee is a thing. And it is subordinate to you on the Maui Planning Commission. You can at this moment send anything to the South Maui Advisory Committee, which you have done, including this plan. But this policy, what I will say that what the planning department was doing with our recommendation was to acknowledge the request made by the CPAC and the community that they wanted more in front of the South Maui Advisory Committee, but of course it is the Maui Planning Commission's choice whether they send things to the planning committee, to the SMAC, to the South Maui Advisory Committee. This policy and removing it or changing it as we have proposed would not negatively affect the CPAC. The CPAC will exist. That's enshrined in 2.80B. It has nothing to do with this policy. So just to be really clear on that, this would just, this policy would, as is written, I'm not even sure that it can require things to go direct. We would have to work with our corporation counsel on that. But at the same time, that both options would preserve your right to send things as you see fit to the South Maui Advisory Committee. As written, it's a different story.
Right, and I was just addressing the wiping it out completely. So I was addressing the duplicity, right? Sort of like this community plan, the planning commission, the county council, they all do their own separate reviews and make changes. It's duplicative, but it's important, that process. I understand the community advisory is a different body, but they kind of also provide that role. I assume they were created because they provide some type of more localized input. So I'd hate to just pretend they don't exist. But I do understand that we should have the option to kick it to them or not. So I'm fine with the revised encourage. But thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lindsay?
I think I second the removal of it. I think, well, right now there is no South Maui representative in a so that at minimum needs to be the priority for South Maui, is having a representative in the Maui Planning Commission, and then fill in the spots at the South Maui Advisory Committee. Or, the other thing is the process at which we are confirmed here is, nominated through the mayor and then confirmed through the council. And that process is not the process that South Maui needs to go through, even though they could be specialists in their area or whatever. In addition, it bisects many moku on the island, so the water, all of those factors is very South Maui centric, and it needs to be, we are all together in this. We are one island. Because of how it is laid out, it is important that all areas in Maui are represented. And like personally, I take full offense for this as a Hawaiian, as a person from Maui who grew up here, who've had 14 generations of kupuna here. This is offensive. And so it should be removed.
Sorry, I cannot have you speak. Thank you, Commissioner Lindsay. I'm sorry, I cannot have you address the commissioners right now. Yep. Commissioner Kealoha.
So I guess I'm recognizing that Commissioner Lindsay and Commissioner Thompson have very strong feelings about this. So my feelings aren't as strong, but I do want to just say that I think I told you guys this before, and I was on the Paia Haiku Advisory Committee. I applied for that. I'm pretty sure I had to be approved by the mayor. That was an opportunity for me to kind of get my feet wet before I came into the Planning Commission. So it was really like a learning opportunity for me. And I guess I have a little bit of a different opinion because I'm like, oh, Paia, like the North Shore, that's my home. I should have a say in what's being done on my side of the island. So a little bit different viewpoint on that, but I don't want to minimize the South Maui Planning Committee or any, planning committee that wants to have a say in the places that they're from or that they live in. But if the majority of the commission has strong feelings about this, I'm open to, going with the majority.
I would say, well, my turn to chime in on this discussion. I think so. And thank you. This is a good discussion. And this is the beauty of having, diverse people and backgrounds on this body. And so I agree with Commissioner Kealoha on the need to have people speak to their communities. One thing about the HANA Advisory Committee and us, or this body decided a long time ago that HANA projects should go to HANA first, because I think everybody hands down recognize that HANA is essentially its like own separate island pretty much. And it should be people from HANA deciding HANA things, because most of us probably make it out there a handful of times a year, maybe, and don't have as much experience. South Maui, on the other hand, is a community where everybody mixes. Students from South Maui go to Maui High or Baldwin or schools in this side. There's people from Central Maui who work in Kihei. My first jobs from middle school all through high school into college were all in South Maui. And I lived in Haiku, so I was commuting from Haiku all the way to Kihei. Like, there's so much mixing with South Maui that I think any projects, like, yes, maybe there are some like very location specific projects that should be decided by neighborhoods down there. For instance, bed and breakfast applications or short-term rentals or things that have like very localized impacts, I think make a lot of sense for that local community to decide upon. But if they're are larger projects that affect, like the region or the whole population of our island moving back and forth, like the high school, housing projects, hotels. There's workers from all over the island who work down in South Maui. And if we make those decisions only down there, it takes out a lot of voices who are impacted, and should have a say also. So I think on this one, I am leaning towards where Vice Chair Thompson and Commissioner Lindsay are at. Like, we still have the option to send projects down there when it's very appropriate for local eyes to analyze them and deliberate on the impacts and mitigation measures. But there's a lot of large projects that really do affect everyone on this island that everybody should have a chance to weigh in on. Commissioner Ducos.
Yeah, and I don't have strong feelings on this. I'm just trying to understand. So when does a a planning advisory committee get assembled, and who decides this region should have it? Just wondering how that process happened, if it's really non-beneficial to South Maui.
I will let the director weigh in on this.
Yeah, so the two committees, Paia Haiku and South Maui, were set up a few years ago by the council. And you've had the opportunity to send things to them. They are established. Right now, we're having difficulty getting quorum, which is why they haven't had a chance to review the community plan that you just sent to them. It's a difficult thing. And I will tell you that we've been in front of council just recently because they've been asking questions about the efficacy of these two, of all three of the advisory committees and whether or not they are useful to the Planning Commission. And this is a bit of a sidebar, and maybe I'll bring this up at another date, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility that the Planning Commission could make comments to the council about whether or not you do want to have advisory committees going forward. But for the purposes of your question, Commissioner Ducos, that's how they were set up. So these exist because council perceived a need for these type of committees to the Planning Commission.
So the county council decided, with the Kihei Community Association, with the CPAC process, there's a benefit to have another body. And how are those members of the body appointed?
So just a point of clarification, the CPAC is not part of the South Maui Advisory Council. It only exists for purposes of this community plan. So they don't review projects. So this is primarily for the SMAC was set up for projects to have opportunity for those folks to review, to have a localized organization review those projects. So that's why it was set up.
Okay, and just the last clarification, how do those members get appointed?
Certainly. So they get appointed in the same way that you do. They are recommended by mayor, and then they go through the independent nomination board now and the confirmation process.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, commissioners, so where does this put us with respect to this policy? So I guess we have Commissioner Lindsay and Vice Chair Thompson, and I guess myself and possibly Commissioner Kealoha moving to strike this. Commissioner Ducos.
Yeah, I'm fine. And sorry, one more, and this is more of an education session for me. So if it gets kicked to the this will help me in the future if this comes up again. If this is kicked to the advisory committee, it's just they run everything through their committee and then we come back and do it again through ours, or do we? Yeah.
Correct.
So it's just an added layer. So
correct.
It's not that we don't. Okay. Helpful. Thank you. And I'm fine supporting the majority.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lindsay.
But it is worth noting, like earlier today, we decided not to send something to the South Maui Advisory Committee because we wanted to hear the testimony and stuff early on in my first couple of years here. The South Maui Advisory Committee we just started sending stuff to them, and that was kind of my original problem, was just not, well, there was like time issues that were a little bit confusing, where, you know, we had 90 days to get it back to whatever number of days, and then it was always cut short, so then we would kind of lose our opportunity to comment. That was one of my problems. And then initially, and then in addition to that was, you know, after my first couple of years, that was when I kind of formed my own, those other opinions I had earlier about it. But it was more, originally it was more just like getting within that time frame and not hearing the voices, like for certain projects, not hearing that original testimony, which carried, I feel like, a lot of passion and backing that we kind of missed. And then it would just come to us and be like, oh, we approved that one. You know, when you just missed like 40 hours of, you know, or 40 testimonies, and, you know, all of this support or not support of projects, and, you know, that kind of voices that the community comes out for, because the community can't come out for 3 events, you know what I mean? They come out, you know, for the big one, and then we kind of missed it at the planning, because the South Maui saw it. But like Commissioner Thayer said, those localized ones, B&B applications, and those ones that affect pretty much just their community, those were the ones I was like, okay, yeah, send them those way. That was initially my feelings, which I feel like you're there right now.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got consensus on striking this policy. All right, good discussion, guys. Thank you. Let's see, next is, oh, unless you have any others on the last 3 policies, we can be done with section 2.2. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I have a couple for the those last 3.
Sure, go
Right,
for it.
so a couple that we should
Do one at a time.
There you go. One is to encourage no fires, shielded wires, and the electric company will do that. Second is on 2.2.49, it says we want to replace all our wooden poles, probably because we don't want them to burn down, with metal ones. And of course, we use concrete already. They're here. I'll say wood aren't good, but even concrete's not that good. Ductile iron is what you want to use. It works for about 75 years without maintenance. So maybe those should be thrown through the HECO. They may have a little more input, but yeah, deeper into how the electrics work, shielded wires, ductile iron poles. But yeah, replacing wooden ones, fine.
Okay, so starting with 2.48. So you're saying insert in here something about shielded wires?
Yes.
Okay. We suggest language. Maybe encourage all electric transmission lines and substations to have shielded wires when located over. Commissioner Digos.
Yeah, I'm not a electric expert, but I don't know if they can shield those high power ones, because I think they lose power over long distances. Just, I'm not an expert in this.
Sure. Yes, they can shield.
Otherwise,
Okay, you know that
they can and do.
Okay.
Okay.
Planning. You got it?
I was just gonna say so you wanted to say encourage all electric transmission lines and substations to have shielded wires and to be located over cleared areas of gravel and the rest of it.
Yeah, you know, this, it might take some work with HECO. They're going to have some input on that, and they're not all going to be shielded, especially the super high ones. If they're on metal already, they won't.
This is just encourage.
Yeah, stick to encourage.
Director?
Yeah, so I think what we can do with these three is we can reach back to HECO and just ask them to weigh in here, and then we can bring these three back to you since I would love to believe that we're going to be able to get through all the policies today, but just call me a little bit pessimistic. I suspect we will not be able to.
Yeah, we got an hour and a half.
And either, at any case, you know, even if we do get through all of these items, we can return, we can re-agendize these. So we'll contact HECO and find out more information on those subjects.
Yeah, thank you. They'll have some verbiage about that. They did it in California because PG&E, they burned down the state. And so all these things we're talking about, it was already discussed. So
Delicately phrased, Vice Chair. Thank you.
And 2.2.50 might not be necessary anymore since they have the PSPS.
yeah, they're doing that already.
Yeah, that's already been in place. We get lots of letters about
Yeah.
what to do about that.
I suspect this one was written pre-PSPS.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll just send these all to HECO for comment and I guess possibly strike 2.50. Beautiful. Let us move on to section 2.3, unless everybody wants a 5-minute break. Keep going? Oh, okay. We can keep going. Sure. Let's go, team. Okay. The department's proposed revisions start with 2.3.10. But we have written testimony on starting from 2.3.1. Or we can start with the introduction, actually.
Okay.
Any comments on the, preamble? I think we said the definitions would all move to the back. For under the definitions for the Slerexa, I was wondering if we need to say the time threshold, 3.2 feet by, 2100. Commissioner Ticos.
Is the Slerexa correct, or should that be the erosion hazard line?
Two definitions.
Director?
Yeah, Chair, there are two definitions on that front page. The first is sea level rise exposure area, and that's the definition that's accurate for that. And then the erosion hazard line follows immediately after with, as defined by the County of Maui's recognized planning target threshold for coastal erosion. The county's recognized planning threshold for coastal erosion is 3.2 feet of sea level rise as identified in the sea level rise viewer. And this, both definitions, I think it's important to note that it may change over time. And I think as a department, we're looking more at ways to make some of our laws evergreen so they aren't stuck to whatever best available science was in place at the time, whatever language was adopted. So I think you're going to see from us more and more moving away from saying 3.2 and saying something more like the state recognized or something like that. So this is fine for the purposes of this plan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, should we jump into the policies? Ooh. Eola, I saw you sneeze. Oh, again. Okay. Okay. Any comments on 2.1 or 3.1 to 3.9? I have a question on 3.5 if anybody doesn't have one yet. Um, 3.5, I'm just wondering if it's supported for Ma'alaya, why not for all of South Maui?
The reason it is supported for Ma'alaya is because there is an area directly behind where it is currently built, where the apartments could be rebuilt out of the Slerexa. So that's why that area is currently designated as agriculture on the map, but this is to make the process easier, but not to designate it now because you don't want new development, but you want redevelopment.
Okay, and then so 2.36 is more generally that for the rest of South Maui?
Yes.
Okay, and so that wouldn't be enough for Ma'alaya. You would need to call it specifically out.
It's to give them more support, yes,
Okay,
for a change in zoning.
okay. Commissioner Lindsay, are you raising your hand?
It's about 2.33.
Okay.
I just wanted to reorder the parentheses to like prioritize the most important to us. So maybe put tourism at the end. My suggestion would be native cultural practices, recreation, fishing, then tourism, or some kind of order like that. Just simple. And then on 2.3.4
Hold on, hold on. Let's take care of that one first. Thank you. Okay, I got thumbs up, thumbs up all around. So department
It's just putting tourism at the end of the list, right?
and native Hawaiian cultural practices first.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. 2.3.4, Commissioner Lindsay.
I wasn't sure if I'm just like not reading it. Protect the public access to and is there something to and preserve? Or is there comma or something? I'm like, am I just confused?
It's protect the public access to and preserve and restore the ecological function of wetlands, shoreline, beaches.
Okay. I was just having a hard time
Yeah.
like breaking it up. That's fine.
We'll add punctuation. Is that cool with you guys?
Okay, anyone other comments? Two point 3.1 to 3.10. We do have written comments on these, if you want to consider those. 2.3.9, I have a question of what is meant by small scale community options.
Remembering the conversation, I believe that is having like a solar on your roof as opposed to just supporting the large solar fields.
Is that clearly defined enough to be usable for the department?
It's supporting.
Okay. Okay. And then community supported renewable energy deployment. I'm wondering about the use of community supported.
That was an addition by CPAC to say that the policy shouldn't just be like a blanket support for all. It needs to make sure there's the outreach as part of it.
Because the converse would be don't support stuff that the community doesn't support.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm hearing nobody has any proposed changes. Otherwise, we can consider the department's change to 2.3.10.
Shall I read that?
I see a thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos for just going on to 2.3.10. Okay.
The intent of this policy is discourage sand from the South Maui Community Plan area from being moved to other places on the island. The department recommends the following language because it is a more accurate term for where the community plan applies. Sand should not be moved between Moku without consulting with Native Hawaiian organizations and/or cultural practitioners from the South Maui Community Plan area.
So changing district to community plan area. Okay.
Ashley.
Commissioner Lindsay?
So that means that cultural practitioners only practicing in that area, is that what you're saying? Can decide if you can move the sand between Moku?
That is how the sentence reads.
Is that okay? I mean, it's fine with me, but I don't know how many people are in that area. Like, okay.
This was proposed by a Native Hawaiian cultural practitioner, Vernon. I'm going to name drop you, Vernon.
I'm just wondering, it's cultural practitioners. That's like gray area from the area. I mean, that's fine, but it seems a little bit gray and hard to enforce. I might be the only one.
Do you want to make it more specific somehow?
No, I agree with it and I see the sentiment. But I'm just like, what gives you credentials to be a practitioner from that area if you don't live in the area? Or, you know,
Because you could be from there and not living there anymore, or vice versa.
or now you live there, so now you can say that you could take the sand out.
Director?
So this is a good moment to remind when this policy would be utilized, right? It would be utilized if there was a project that proposed moving sand between Moku. And as part of that project, we would be asking them to say, did you consult with Native Hawaiian organizations and or cultural practitioners? I don't know that there's any other way to make it more specific. In fact, this is better than what happens now, which is nothing, right? So this is a step in the right direction until there's some other way to describe this. Like I can't think of a better way to say this, or to make it, and enforceable is not the right word, but make it applicable to the things that it would be applicable to. This is probably the best possible language we can get to achieve the outcome that the CPAC was looking for. And specifically, I know the person who proposed this is an area very close to his heart. So I think this is probably the best we're going to get.
That's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay, everybody good with the proposed change from district to community plan area? Okay, I see thumbs up from everybody. Okay. 2.3.1. Oops. 1.2.
The intent of policy 2.3.12 is to require owners of vacant land to incorporate defensible space where the property interfaces with existing development. Policies are only reviewed when a change in use or development triggers the community plan. It is appropriate to make this policy an action for the Maui Fire Department to undertake. The Planning Department recommends deleting policy 2.3.12 and adding the following action. Require landowners of vacant land to incorporate defensible space around the perimeter of developments that their lands abut and provide ongoing maintenance as per the recommendations of the Department of Fire and Public Safety. Three thumbs up.
Was that thumbs up from everybody? Okay, thumbs up. Commissioner Lindsay?
So I'm struggling with this in action right now at my house. And it is I feel like it's like a blanketed clause and it is at the fight. I support the public safety. I see why the need is there, but like they're not considering like native plants, like driving out to Wai'ehu area and that huge clearing on the left side and recent grubbing in Kihei area. I'm kind of weary of this. But it's just something that I wanted to point out. It doesn't mean I'm not supportive of it.
Would you want to suggest a change to acknowledge that, or to allow some kind of, if it's
Maybe
native vegetation?
encourage native plantings or something like that, because that is consideration that I don't think the fire department considers.
Director?
It could be that we could add another organization to this. I'm wondering about the arborist committee or someone else who might have knowledge of that native plant component. And I'm looking to Karen to see if she has any thoughts, or Jackie, either one of you, on someone else we could add, because I totally understand what you're saying, that Department of Fire and Public Safety is looking at preventing fires. And they're looking at that by scraping the dirt, scraping down to the dirt, because nothing is more protective than a big open area with no things that can burn. So, but if you want to include some component of, as the commissioner suggested, some component of, native plants to do a similar thing,
I just believe that like framing out all of these parcels is not the answer, because we're going to end up with these huge gaps and then drain it, like there's lots of issues that happen after we have these like perimeter framed out lots. But that's if we put native plantings in there or another entity that kind of would encourage it. Because I mean, putting up like arborist versus fire is going to win, you know. So if you can kind of, public safety is most important. But those other things that are not considered should also be considered as options. And it's also like just where it is, you know, maybe areas with a little more wetness doesn't need it or does need it, or drier areas don't need, you know.
Yes, I would add that there is, you know, projects going on to plant green breaks as another means of slowing down fire, because having more vegetation, it keeps more moisture in the soil, which keeps down fire hazards. And so I agree, we should not be bulldozing all of our green space. Like, yes, remove the invasive fire prone stuff that just leads to the fire cycle, but we should definitely have an eye towards incorporating native species, which are less fire prone and much better for the environment in all ways.
So I want to amend what I said, and all the people who I've worked in the fire service with are probably just been listening to this going, crazy girl, say this out loud. But defensible space isn't just, you know, basically cleared land. It can be green space. And some of the best examples of surviving homes on wildland urban interface just have big green lawns around them or other types of green space around them. So I think what you could do is to add something to this Department of Fire and Public Safety incorporating native plants as appropriate or something like that, just so that's triggered in the action. So just adding like a, you know, a phrase at the end, incorporating native plants and green space.
Yeah, green breaks with native plants. Commissioner Dicos, you are raising your hand, followed by Commissioner Lindsay.
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Lindsay bringing it up, because I do think, you know, there's a reflex action to denude everything, and but that leads to other problems. So not an expert on the native plant, but there's plenty of native trees that are actually fire resistant. You know, you can create a fire break with trees, the right kind of trees and all that stuff. So I know I think there's a report, the third report that came out for the line of fires. I don't know if it's public yet, but they were going to describe what properties didn't burn and sort of why didn't that happen? You know, we mentioned like the banyan tree, all the park benches under the banyan tree didn't light up because of all the moisture in the banyan tree. And I know that's a touchy subject, but yeah, I think there's lots of information on how you secure your perimeter, and maybe just having this language gives the impression of just denuding, keeping it just a shaded area. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay?
Just appreciating the talking now that's going on. If you could incorporate, just put something with native plants in there, I think it would at least cue them, like prioritizing defensible spaces, prioritizing use of native plants, or something like that, so that that's like the first thing that comes to their head, or adding it as a choice when that wasn't a choice when they came to my house. They just said, clear out 30 feet around. That's it. That's the only choice.
Could we say, so I think this would apply to 2.3.11, which will remain as a policy, and then 3.12, which will become an action if we are good with this. If we could say like incorporate defensible space, which may include like native green breaks or native plantings around the perimeter.
Did Commissioner Lindsay say she wanted to put prioritizing green breaks and native plants?
I'm open to verbiage, any kind of verbiage that sounds fine, Chair.
You guys get this, what we're going for?
Yeah, Chair, that's what I would recommend is allow us a little time to work through this language and potentially even talk to the Department of Fire and Public Safety
Okay.
about some potential language to put in there reflecting the conversation that we've had.
Okay. Good discussion, guys. So that's 3.11 and 3.12. Anybody have anything on 3.13? Otherwise, we can consider department comments on 3.14. Okay, I think we can do 3.14.
The intent of this policy is to ensure the latest editions of the South Maui Community Wildfire Protection Plan and the Maui County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan are being consulted. The department recommends the following clarifying language. Consult and apply the goals, objectives, and actions of the current South Maui Community Wildfire Protection Plan and the Maui County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. And so that we added the word current before South Maui Community Wildfire Protection and deleted the update after the multi-hazard mitigation plan.
Commissioners, thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Thumbs up from Vice Chair. 2 thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Beautiful. Next 3.16.
The intent of policy 2.3.16 is to ensure that buildings that serve as emergency shelters are hurricane and fire resistive. To ensure the intent of this policy is accomplished, it is appropriate to also make the retrofit of buildings an action for the Department of Management to initiate. The Planning Department recommends the following language. New action, retrofit existing buildings that serve as emergency shelters to enhanced hurricane protection area and fire resistive standards. And there's 2 twos in there. We'll delete that second one.
Or is it supposed to be built to or
To be
something?
built to. Yep. Sorry.
No problem. Commissioners? I see thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha, thumbs up from Vice Chair, Commissioner Dicos, Commissioner Lindsay. Okay. Just looking back at 3.15 per our discussion, could we incorporate a nod towards native plants in here? Fire breaks and bioswales. If everybody's good with that. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Thumbs up from Vice Chair. Thumbs up from Kealoha. Question from Commissioner Dicos.
I'll just throw that in there, but obviously any water reuse for irrigation is certainly a way to combat fire dryness and all that. I know that's a touchy area, but if that can enter the conversation as well, that'd be a great use to recharge and have your house fireproof. Just a suggestion.
Commissioner Lindsay.
Can you say that again? Kind of came out chunky.
Okay, so, and it may be a difference between an off-grid versus a public works sewer. So all of your gray water currently goes into the sewer, and now we have to deal it in the injection wells. So all that water could be used for irrigation on a property that would enhance the reduction of potable water. It would enhance the fire resistance of the property. So it ties into the fire. But of course, if you're hooked up to public sewer, the public works is going to throw a fit when they hear about reuse of gray water. So I know it's an issue, but it accomplishes a lot of the policies in here.
There's actually a policy for that.
Oh, that is in here, says Planner Karen Kumpwich. To
Right?
what you're speaking to, Commissioner Dicos. It's covered. Your thumbs up.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So are you guys good with having native plants in there though? Okay. Thank you. 3.16, and then I think we'll take a 5-minute break. Oh,
7.
sorry. We just did 1.6. Sorry. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break now since that's transitioning from fire to water. Everybody go with 5-minute break. Okay, we will be back at, let's say 5:55. It's 8 minutes. Thank you. See you then. Aloha hiahi kako. Now, aloha hiahi kako. Good evening. We are back on our Maui Planning Commission meeting of September 10, 2024 on the South Maui Community Plan. We are about to talk about policy 2.3.17, which the department has proposed corrections on, or edits, I should say.
The intent of this policy is to ensure existing water regulations are consulted and applied during the development and redevelopment process. The department recommends the following language because it is clearer and more concise. Current and future development must adhere to and be consistent with the public trust doctrine, the state water code, and the Maui Island Water Use and Development Plan. We deleted the following public policies regarding water must always be adhered to for current and future development.
Okay. Thumbs up, I see from Commissioner Dicos, Kealoha, Lindsay, and Vice Chair. Easy. 2.3.18.
The intent of this policy is to minimize water use for landscaping. The department recommends the following changes to the policy language to be more precise and implementable. Require new developments to install landscaping that minimizes water use with drought-resistant and microclimate appropriate design, canopy trees to reduce evaporation, and plants minimizing native species. Emphasizing native species, using water catchment systems to support irrigation, and use gray water where available and allowable by the State Department of Health. What was removed was reduces was replaced with minimizes, and evapotranspiration was replaced with evaporation, and overstory was replaced with the word canopy.
Commissioners. Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos, Kealoha, Vice Chair Thompson. I have a note on evapotranspiration versus evaporation. I think you should keep evapotranspiration because that is a measure regarding it encompasses evaporation plus the transpiration from the tree's leaves. That is like an actual measure in arboriculture. And so like there's studies that native trees are better for the environment because of how much their evapotranspiration rates are compared to invasive trees.
But evapotranspiration rates are high. You don't want to reduce those.
Right.
Yeah, you want to.
So you would, yes.
So to increase evapotranspiration and decrease evaporation?
No, actually, you don't necessarily want that high because that means there's more water like evaporating out of the soil, I think. So like when you're comparing, for instance, strawberry guava to ohiolehua, strawberry guava transpires more water than strawberry guava does. So that means, strawberry guava transpires more water than ohiolehua. So that like more water is lost out of the environment and ohio will like keep more water within the environment.
Thank you.
I don't know. It might need to like be reworded altogether or take out the mention of evaporation and evapotranspiration.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, none of us are scientists. Oh, except for maybe you. And I think it would be, I think we have your insight here. I think, do you want to look into this a little bit more and maybe we can craft language so that it keeps the evapotranspiration component?
Yeah, I think so. Because like you measure the soil under the canopy, the tree canopy, and that tells you the evapotranspiration rate of trees.
We're good with that. We can.
Okay.
You have your intent.
Thank you. 2.3.20. Unless anyone has 2.3.19 as anything. Okay.
The intent of this policy is to ensure the source of water resources are considered when development is proposed. However, the phrase "above all else" is difficult for the department to implement. The department recommends removing this phrase, so it just read, prioritize the protection, preservation, and management of Maui's water sources, including aquifers, recharge areas, streams, and springs.
Thumbs up from Commissioner DeCos. Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Okay. Wonderful. Oh, we did have a note for that we found on the break for Commissioner DeCos on 2.3.22. Require the use of gray water and recycled water in county parks and community gardens, and we could add in greenways to your point on 2.3.15 that we had discussed earlier. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Question from Vice Chair Thompson.
Does county code allow using gray water? And
That is why it says when legal and safe to do so, because they want to support it, but not, they want to require it, but not until it is legal and safe. Because currently you were correct, it is not.
yeah, someone called. I had my washing machine going into my banana patch. They seemed to love it. It was illegal. County came and said, "Sorry, you can't back into your sewer." I'm like, "What? No, you live here, right? This is how you." It's just soapy water. But and they said, "Sorry." But it may be legal now, or that hasn't changed.
Well, the language in here says when legal. Commissioner Lindsay.
I think it's a chicken and the egg kind of situation. We just got to start it and then it's going to come around because this is going to be 20 years from now and it will be legal by then. DECOS is paving the way for us.
Okay, thumbs up from Vice Chair. Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha, Lindsay, and DECOS. Okay, added greenways into 2.3.22. Okay. 0.23, or the department has comments on 2.3.24.
The intent of this policy is to eliminate injection wells in Ma'alaya. The intent of this policy is already covered by policy 2.3.25, which aims to eliminate injection wells throughout South Maui. Therefore, the department recommends removing policy 2.3.24.
Okay, so is this like unlike that other pair of policies? This is okay, it's not calling out Ma'alai specifically. Okay,
It's not necessary to call it out specifically.
okay. Commissioner Lindsay, you have a question?
Is that because Ma'alaya is a priority to South Maui, or maybe?
I think this was included originally because it was the one that was already in the works. Whereas the other ones might take longer, but they should all be done. But the policy as it is now, the other policy, 2.3.25, covers it anyway, which is just for all South Maui.
That's it. Yep, all good. I was just making sure they're not like, do Malaya first because they're, I don't know, leaking the most or whatever.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kealoha.
I think Malaya is being worked on, so I just wonder if it's like that other one where they're like, oh, this lends support. But I'm just wondering, the fact that Malaya is private and South Maui or Kihei is public, does that like play any difference in having these two different?
Director?
No, there's no difference. It really is, I guess, just globally, the fewer policies we have in a plan, the more likely it is we're going to be able to implement all of them. So this is just a way to clean it up. So this was one of the places where we felt that the policy that is in existence that we're recommending keeping is sufficient to accommodate the intent here. So.
Okay. I think we got thumbs up all around on that one. Yes. Okay. 2.3.26.
Intent of this policy is to increase utilization of R1 water. The department recommends the following more accurate language. Support increased utilization of R1 water via innovative techniques such as efficient distribution systems, scalping facilities, natural earth filtering systems, and recycled water storage ponds and lagoons. So better was replaced with increased.
Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha, Dikos, Lindsay, and Vice Chair. Nice. Easy. Amazing. Moving on to 2.4, guys. This is like light speed. we got people dancing in the audience here. Okay, any comments on the preamble to this section? I think I just see a grammatical thing in how will setting this goal affect our future?
Can we send this to OEV resources?
Yeah.
Just the preamble, I don't know, first paragraph, since
Yep.
they didn't look at it yet.
Oh, and we talked about that history section in the chapter 1, yeah, to go to them already. Okay. So yeah, can we send this to them too? Perfect. Everybody good with that? Yep. Okay. But yeah, that sentence on how will setting this goal affect our future? Committed to supporting holistic land use and watershed management from Mauka to Makai that reduce risks from flooding and improves South Maui. They don't.
Chair, I think that should be 2. So management from Malcolm to Makai to reduce risks from flooding and improve South Maui's long-term resiliency.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you. Definitions, everybody good? Commissioner Digos.
I know way early on, we talked about the beyond the shoreline connection, the hydrology that connects Malka to the ocean. And, to supplement fisheries and all that good stuff, limu, all the stuff that the freshwater input has. I know there was talk of putting language in there that added that in, and I don't know if that would also apply here. One of the goals is to reconnect the hydrology to the ocean to support marine resources.
Sorry, where exactly are you talking about?
How will setting this goal affect our future? With this goal, South Maui's committed, so talks about the watershed to reduce risks from flooding, improve long-term resiliency, and maybe something about restoring marine resources. That's one of the big goals of the Malkin and Mackay watershed management. So there's everything above the shoreline, but it actually percolates through the seeps, through the freshwater inflow, affects fisheries, affects, coral growth, which are important for flushing. And there's a huge connection that goes below the water line that I don't think this captures any of that. But
Okay. Yeah. Everybody comments? Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Director?
Yeah, I think there's some question from the long range team about how to incorporate what Commissioner Decos is talking about. As you know, our jurisdiction ends at the water line. So we're kind of focusing on the area where we have the expertise, and knowing that supporting holistic land use and watershed management, Maukus Makai does have a positive effect on those areas beyond our jurisdiction. I'm not sure if you just want some language in setting this in here that kind of acknowledges more directly that this work that we're doing on the shoreline and above is going to have a positive impact on the marine waters. Just some sort of acknowledgement of that, Commissioner Decos?
yeah, I mean, I think they're fine. I think there's a lot of decision makers, you talk about letting fresh water reach the ocean, and they think that's crazy. Why would you waste perfectly good fresh water by letting it run into the ocean? And I think there's a huge, that's where a lot of people said fresh water is so valuable that there's not much of an understanding how it feeds the marine environment, and it's critical part in doing that. So I just think it helps people understand why streams need to flow to the ocean, why aquifers need to seep clean water into the marine inside. It's not, it just ties that component. It could just be a sentence, but it's like, oh, that's why we want it to continue.
Mm-hmm. So to acknowledge that allowing flows will help improve the nearshore environment.
So just a sentence in the introduction, is what, in the how
And
this,
that, how will this affect our future?
in that section. I think we can work on language.
Yeah. Okay. I think everybody said they're good with that. Okay. Any other comments on the introduction section, or we can jump into the policies? I know we have a lot of testimony on 2.4.5 A and B, but does anybody have anything on 2.4.1 through 2.4.4? Commissioner Kealoha.
Can I propose that we replace minimize with mitigate in 2.4.4? Mitigate storm water runoff.
Mitigate instead of minimize. Commissioners? 2.4.4. It's towards the end of the sentence. It's like the last line. She's saying mitigate instead of minimize. Question? Vice Chair?
Can you mitigate? Does mitigate mean eliminate versus minimize? Because I don't know that you can't eliminate all stormwater. Right?
Yeah, I guess, can you, explain why mitigate versus
I
minimize?
just feel like mitigate is a stronger word than minimize. Like, to me, minimize is like encourage. No. Mitigate is like I mean, it goes back to kind of what Commissioner Decos is always saying, like, Can you just not, can you take care of your pre and post runoff? It just to me creates a stronger push for like, hey, we really care about this topic. Or, I mean, for me, I care about the topic, but.
Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Commissioner Lindsay, thoughts?
I'm wondering if we should add native plants here also. But yeah, mitigate is fine with me.
Question from Vice Chair.
Does mitigate mean eliminate? Do they have to have no? Just as much as possible, I suppose.
I guess thinking through it could be like retained so that it's like buffered before it runs into the ocean, maybe.
Well, stormwater, and if you get 10 inches of in 4 hours, it's going in the ocean and across your lawn and all your neighbors and everywhere. I live in Kahana, it happens. So you can't stop it.
Mitigate would mean to make less severe or less serious, whereas minimize is decreasing. So it's
They're not the same.
to minimize the stormwater runoff as opposed to make the stormwater runoff less serious. So minimize was chosen for a specific reason here, but either one's kind of fine here.
Oh, we have, oh, was that Caleb showing himself for language? Okay.
Very good.
Well,
Yeah,
Commissioner.
I was sorry, I was just going to agree. You know, when you use the term mitigate, you're usually referring to something that's kind of intrinsically bad. Minimize is based on, you know, changing the quantity of something rather than changing the harm caused by something. So that was just what I was going to add. So if there was something, you know, yeah, I was just gonna voice my agreement. And then the director said something, so I didn't feel like I needed to anymore.
No, thank you. Appreciate you chiming in on this.
Yeah, that's helpful. Can we say minimize and mitigate?
Director?
Yeah, no, either one is totally fine. And both of them is also totally fine. This is another place, I think that it's easy as we cruise down this road to think that this is the only thing covering the rules. And there are a bunch of rules associated with stormwater and how you deal with stormwater on projects. So I don't want you to think that this is the only thing that's going to keep the stormwater on the property. So just reminding commissioners of that.
Okay, so now we are looking at you minimize and mitigate, or mitigate and minimize, either one.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, I think we got thumbs up from Vice Chair, thumbs up from everybody. Yes, Mr. Rowe, please go ahead.
Yeah, if we are going to use mitigate, I would say, you know, maybe add another sentence, another couple words in there, you know, mitigate the effects of.
Okay, department can work with that. I see nodding from the director and everybody. Okay. And do we want to Commissioner Lindsay's comment, incorporate native plants? I get thumbs ups all around. Yes. More native plants is a good thing, everybody. It's a good thing. Okay. Yes. All right. So this brings us to 2.4.5 A and then B. Director?
Chair, if I may, there was public comment on this particular subject, so I want to address that first before we dive into the department's recommended changes. First, absolutely correct. We're in this position right now where we're in this odd time between we have super high res things that you can zoom in on, and then we also have printed things that are static. I am constantly, I don't know about you, finding myself looking at a static map and going, trying to zoom in on it. So I just want to address one thing. There is going to be a map online that will be easier for folks to see, where you can zoom in real tight and see exactly why we drew the lines exactly where we did when it came to gulches. So I want to say that out loud. The definition of gulch, there was some discussion of the definition of gulch. That is in Appendix D. So you will be able to, you can look in your plan and see what our definition of gulch is. There was also some statement made that 100 feet was arbitrarily picked. That is not accurate. 100 feet was discussed with the West Maui community, and the reason it was picked, it was in consultation with our partners who do watershed restoration work, and also in our own knowledge and research on how critical areas are treated in other places outside of Hawaii. In a lot of places, a state will mandate that communities do a critical areas ordinance, and those critical areas are established, and then you say, this is the buffers around those critical areas. This was an attempt in West Maui that carried over to South Maui to address this kind of gap in our legal framework here in Hawaii. So it's based on research that this 100 feet is a good place to consider keeping space so buildings are protected, so people's uses are protected. And so I just wanted to address those couple things. We do acknowledge that there needs to be an update to the legend in 3.17. And so we'll take care of that for sure. But now I'll stop and turn it over to Karen to talk about the department's recommendation. I just wanted to make some things clear. Would you like me to read both or just one at a time?
Let's do one at a time.
Okay. 2.4.5A, the intention of this policy is to ensure redevelopment near drainage ways implements low impact development strategies to prevent stormwater runoff in the special management area. The policy already identifies a specific map within the plan. To be more direct and eliminate confusion and distinguish this policy from item 2.4.5B, the department recommends changing the policy by removing A and deleting the list of associated gulches. For redevelopment, gulches and drainage ways as identified in the map in figure 3.17 of this plan must remain in open space, and no new permanent structures may be developed in or within 100 feet of the top of bank of identified gulches and drainage ways, unless low impact development strategies are implemented to prevent stormwater runoff.
Thank you. I see a thumbs up from Commissioner Dacos. Nodding from Commissioner Kealoha. Question from Commissioner Lindsay.
I'm concerned about the blanket clause for this, just blanketing at all of them under 100 feet. I understand that the West Maui backing, but I feel like the gulches are closer together and they're more, so many more. Yeah.
Can I comment? I have a question.
Go ahead.
If you look at the West Maui map, there's actually more and they're closer together. But one of the Kihei's major problems in South Maui's is flooding, and that comes Mauka to Makai. The 100 feet, this is also low impact development for areas that are already developed. So it's just to encourage better development in the areas that are probably already being impacted by flooding.
Commissioner Dacos.
So can you expand on the unless low impact development strategies are implemented? So if you're in, if you want to build in the 100-foot buffer, what do you have to do? Like what would give you the,
You'd
What-
have to use low impact development standards, which can include more open space, raising your house. Yeah.
So to address your question, Commissioner Deacos, it would be done on a case-by-case basis, so that it would depend on, what the characteristics of that area are and what the development being proposed. So you would see that, as those projects came through, you would see evidence of folks trying to comply with this, and planning would work with those folks to assist them. So it could be different depending on the project proposed.
okay, and redevelopment versus new development? This could be existing structures that,
It could be like there's a hotel that's being redeveloped in the same area that has already been developed, but they would need to do low impact development standards if they were within 100 feet of the gulch.
okay. Thank you, Chair.
So what if there is already a structure, a permanent structure within 100 feet of a gulch?
Those are existing. That's
Okay.
an existing use.
But that wouldn't be a redevelopment if they renovated or something.
If they did the painted the outside of their house, no, they would not need to tear out their driveway.
If they remodeled the interior. Is this getting too hypothetical?
I think that we need to pull it back just a slight bit. I think, we have new SMA and shoreline rules that give a lot of no needs. So you're not going to see some of those things anymore. This policy, yeah, I don't need, I worry about us getting too far in the weeds here.
Okay, and so we had a lot of testifiers that said this should be done on a case-by-case basis. So is this the way it's written would be implemented or considered reviewed on a case-by-case basis?
Thanks, Chair. I'm certain that everyone in the audience is going to do a collective groan when I say this, but I do think it does, because you have the ability to adjust if you're going to include these low impact development strategies. So I think it's the best case by case we can do. The policy that was adopted in West Maui is even more restrictive, if I'm not mistaken. No, I mean, it's the same. It's low impact development strategies. It's all the same.
Commissioner Deacos.
Thank you, Chair. So it'd be at the discretion of the department to determine whether those low impact strategies were adequate and the buffer is not needed. Wouldn't necessarily come to the commission on a case by case.
It would depend on the project being proposed. So we may be the call, you may be the call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lindsay.
And that's by scope, right? So smaller ones you would deal with and larger ones we would.
Yeah, it depends on what, who the final decision-making authority would be. And that it would either be you or it would be us. It would depend on the project.
I'm in support of case by case basis. If this does that, then I'm in support.
Okay, thumbs up from Vice Chair. Nodding from Commissioner Kealoha. I think Deacos gave a thumbs up and Commissioner Lindsay voiced her support. Okay. 2.4.5B.
The intent of this policy is to ensure that gulches and drainage ways are protected as part of the development and subdivision process by being maintained as open space. The South Maui CPAC found it important to name the primary gulches to identify them as valuable drainage ways. The department recommends separating this policy from 2.4.5A by updating the policy number and removing B. To ensure the vision of the policy is achieved and enforceable, The department recommends adding the following language. For new developments and subdivisions, gulches and drainage ways as identified in the map on figure 3.1.7 of this plan must remain in open space and no new permanent structures may be developed in or within 100 feet of the top of bank of identified gulches and drainage ways, with the exception of public bridge crossings and public utilities, including but not limited to Ma'alaya, Kanayo, Pohakea, Waikapu, Waiakoa, Kalanihako'i, Waipulani, Waimahaihai, Liliholo, Kevakapu, Wailea, Kamaole, Palawea, and Kapunakea gulches. This open space area must be identified on the final approved subdivision maps. The addition was this open space area must be identified on the final approved subdivision maps, and that was something we worked with the Department of Public Works on.
Okay. Commissioners? Thoughts or questions? Thumbs up from Commissioner Dicos. Nodding from Commissioner Kealoha. Thumbs up. Okay. Commissioner Lindsay?
I need to think about it. I flagged it to maybe bring up at the next meeting.
Okay. Vice Chair? Okay. Director?
It would be helpful to know what issues you're grappling with so that we can be prepared to answer any questions.
Commissioner Lindsay?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to that.
Oh, Director asked if for, the department to be prepared or whoever resource people, if you could, give a little insight into what you are weighing out in case they need to come with any further information or resource people.
I don't think that'll be needed. I just need to process what this means. I might not even have any more questions.
Okay. I'm just wondering right now if per the testimony we got, if we should add in the reference to Keokea next to Waimahaihai.
I would add it instead of just removing it. That was.
Oh, yeah, it was, well, the written testimony we got adds it in parentheses next to it, because I think that's a common map reference for that gulch. I can show you this if you want.
No, I saw.
Okay. Vice Chair, you're okay to flag this for next time, you said, like Commissioner Lindsay?
Yes, I was concerned with, from the maps, I couldn't see clearly about these, so we're going to look at the updated maps.
Well, the
one-
high resolution.
Yeah, high
version.
resolution.
That is available online. We are South Maui. There's a map that you can put on the gulches and drainage ways.
All right.
So we'll make sure the commission gets access to that link easily so that you don't have to go hunting for it.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we will revisit 2.4.5B.
Chair,
Yes.
do we have agreement though to add Keokea?
Oh, is everybody good with adding the reference to Keokea? Okay, thumbs up all around.
Get that done.
Yep, thank you. Okay, next. 2.4.6.
So this is an accompaniment to the last one. The intent of this policy is to allow flexibility to adjust open space designations based on the drainage studies done as part of the development and subdivision process, while prioritizing the protection of natural gulches and drainage ways. To provide additional specificity for clarity and ease of administration, the department recommends the following language. During the subdivision or development process, the open space designations identified in the community plan map may be realigned to better reflect and protect the natural drainage ways, but may not be diminished.
Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up from Commissioner Digos. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay. Thumbs up from Commissioner Kealoha. Okay, very nice. 2.4.7.
The intent of this policy is to reduce sediment loss and protect water quality using native plants and, where necessary, non-invasive plants. The phrasing of the policy makes it difficult to parse out the intention. The department recommends the following changes. To reduce sediment loss and protect water quality, redevelopment and new development shall improve degraded areas on site by planting appropriate native plants and, as needed, ecologically advantageous non-invasive plants. So it was just removing improved degraded areas on site to a different location in the policy. Thumbs up.
Okay, I got thumbs up from Digos, Kealoha, Vice Chair Thompson, and Commissioner Lindsay. Amazing. Okay, 2.4.8.
The intent of this policy is to support watershed management and protect water quality during development. However, there should be an allowance for variability. If a development cannot avoid impacts, impacts must be minimized. If impacts cannot be minimized, impacts must be mitigated. The department recommends the following language. To support watershed management and protect water quality, redevelopment and new development must avoid, minimize, or mitigate impacts to the existing surface and groundwater hydrology as appropriate to conditions. Wetlands, wetland buffers, and recharge area conservation and restoration must be prioritized. So the changes we're deleting shall be required and replacing it with must, and changing and to or between avoid, minimize, and mitigate, and adding as appropriate to conditions.
Thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Commissioner Digos, question?
Yeah, I have an issue with the or. If you have or, you might as well take out the avoid and the mitigate. Any of the stronger language is kind of useless with the or.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
That's why as appropriate to conditions was added. So the priority is on must avoid. And then if you can't avoid, you would minimize. And if you can't minimize, then you mitigate.
Looks like Commissioner Kealoha is thinking.
I'm trying to relate this one to the storm water runoff because I'm like, we reduced the amount of storm water runoff and we mitigated the effects. But how do, I guess I'm like, why can't we minimize and mitigate? I'm trying to compare those two.
Director?
Yeah, to be fair, the original one we said minimize, so we didn't want to do and mitigate. So just this protocol of first avoiding, then minimizing, then if cannot do those two other mitigate is pretty common across the planning world. This is the way that we evaluate and adjust to these conditions that each project faces. And so, yes, first working towards to avoiding, and then working to minimize if you cannot avoid, and then working to mitigate those things you can't avoid and minimize is really logical. And using the conditions of, we can't, so we're writing law for all circumstances, and we can't envision all circumstances. So this is a way to allow some of that variability in those circumstances.
Commissioner Dicos.
So could you leave the and use as appropriate to conditions to adjust? I guess and is kind of
I think and wouldn't
strange to be,
work.
yeah, no.
So I guess just to double check. So as a planner is reviewing this, it would be standard protocol to go in that order. Okay. Thumbs up from Commissioner Lindsay.
Chair.
Yep, Commissioner Dicos.
I mean, I'm surprised it's standard language. So, because if I'm developing, I'm reading this, I'm going straight to minimize. I'm gonna throw up my silt fence and I'm gonna say I'm using BMPs and that's it. I've met the criteria. How do you get someone to go above and beyond just catching the bare minimum of stormwater?
I think that comes out in the plan review process, but Director, anything else?
Yeah, that's correct. I think this is one of those large philosophical conversations that happens at 6:45 after a very, very long day. In a perfect world, this way of doing business would be codified at the state level. I go back to critical areas in other places will say, first, you must avoid the critical area. If you cannot avoid the critical area, you minimize your impact on the critical areas. If you can't minimize your impact, then you mitigate that impact. This should just be our standard operating procedure in the county. When we're going to look at this, we're going to say, did the applicant first try to avoid impact to the existing surface and groundwater hydrology? If they didn't, if they did that and found that they couldn't, then they minimize that. And if they didn't minimize that, then they were looking for evidence that they mitigated. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system, but it is reflecting the flexibility that some of us need, that we're going to need to review some of these projects, and that the applicants are going to need based on the existing conditions. I don't know if that answers your question, Commissioner Dicos. I know this is a tough one for you, but that's how I look at it.
Okay, I mean, if this is standard, I take your word for it, and that last sentence helps beef it up. Just highlighting the must be prioritized. So I'm fine with it.
Okay. So everybody good with the department's proposed changes? I see nodding, thumbs up, nodding, and thumbs up. Okay. Let's see, that brings us to, unless anyone has 2.4.10, 2.4.11, oh, sorry, 2.4.9. Then we can go to 2.4.11.
The intent of this policy is to require microclimate appropriate native plants in all developments and to minimize water use for irrigation. The department recommends returning to the simpler language from the August 2022 department draft. Note, CPAC recommended removing endemic from the policy because it is a subset of native. Require new development and redevelopment to include native and endemic plants appropriate for the microclimate to conserve water, provide shade and beauty, and reduce sediment runoff. All new landscaping must minimize irrigation needs. What was deleted was as needed ecologically advantageous non-invasive plants may be used. That is also called out in another policy.
Okay. Sorry, can you say again why you're putting back in and endemic?
It's something we've heard from you guys during this process to have the more specific plants for the area.
Oh,
And so endemic. would be the
oh,
more-
okay.
Yeah. I was just noting that that's why that.
Oh, no, thank you. Well, to me, I think, I think, Commissioner Dicos, I can comment on this afterwards, but go ahead, Commissioner Dicos.
Well, maybe this is a question to you, Chair, because of your background, but I know in permaculture, when you're trying to reestablish a vegetated area, sometimes you use a lot of non-native just to build some canopy to sort of jumpstart the, that transition. So I know on my property, I use a lot. They're not invasive, they don't spread, but they provide the nitrogen fixation you need. They stabilize the soil. They're drought tolerant. Whereas if I started only with natives, it would be very hard to get the ball rolling. So I know non-natives are a curse word everywhere you go, but sometimes they provide very good functionality until you can establish the natives. But that's your area, so just gathering your thoughts.
No, thank you for that. I guess I was going to say, I don't think you need to put in endemic plants here because native would encompass endemic. And I think if you limited it to endemic, then you would cut out like a'ali'i and naupaka that are indigenous and not endemic.
This policy does just say to include. It doesn't say to only include.
Yeah.
But the and endemic, it has both. You can take that out as well if you prefer to take it out.
Yeah, because I think if you have endemic, you would want to make space for indigenous, and then you're just back to the umbrella of native, that case. But this is one of those almost 7 o'clock meetings.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that the ecologically advantageous non-native plant is like vetiver grass that a lot of people use nowadays, is my suspicion. But I wouldn't want that to take the place of using native species, of which there are many that could be planted all over the place. And I have my concerns. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm good with this being taken out, and I appreciate the putting in endemic, but I don't think that's necessary. I think you could just say include native plants appropriate for the microclimate. I could, but if to your point of it doesn't say how many or only or stuff like that, I would say at least a majority, if we could put that in here.
Require new development and redevelopment to include a majority.
Or however it would make sense.
I think perhaps require new development and redevelopment to prioritize native and endemic plants appropriate for the microclimate to conserve water, blah, blah, blah. In landscaping. So after sediment runoff in landscaping, so or something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll work on, I think we can work on the language. This is not, our comment here is not a die on your sword moment either. So we're not going to sit here and argue like we have on other things. So whatever we defer to the plant people.
Okay. Commissioner Dicos.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go in a rabbit hole, but so if you were doing fruit trees, they're not, you want to put an ulu tree, that's not native. You want to put some ground cover, sweet potato ground cover. So is this,
So we could
am I
include
getting
canoe
too
plants.
much in the
To your
weeds?
point. Those would be canoe plants.
Okay, pigeon pea is a great nitrogen fixer that grows easy, gives you canopy I'm just wondering if, I hate to beat down those very, very useful plants that.
I guess
but
that's why I
think we're
suggested-
getting in the weeds. Guess we're getting in the
No,
weeds.
appreciate the discussion. That's why I suggested majority, so it's not all, but at least they're like prioritized, and you could still have other stuff. but we could add in canoe plants to your point about ulu and uala and stuff.
Okay, but I would rip out all my pigeon pea.
You'd still be in there as long as it's not a majority of your landscape. Commissioner Lindsay.
I'm sure there's other legumes you can find that are equal that maybe are not as common. So keep maybe like a native version. Pigeon
Yep.
pea.
There are native species in many, 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 many plant families. Okay, I think you got our sentiments on that.
So, are your sentiments sticking with taking out endemic and prioritizing native plants, or do you just want to leave it as it is without?
I think you can say prioritize native and canoe plants.
And you're okay with removing as needed ecologically?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that.
Mahalo,
Is
Chair.
that majority or that's not in there anymore?
Well, I think would prioritize
Yeah, I
enough
think-
direction.
I think that's clear. If we say, prioritize to prior, instead of include, to prioritize native and canoe plants appropriate for the microclimate, et cetera.
I think that would take care of it. Yep. Okay, thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Commissioner Lindsay?
Can you read this again? I'm
Um,
brain is almost done.
Require new development and redevelopment to prioritize native plants appropriate for the microclimate to conserve water, provide shade and beauty, and reduce sediment runoff. All new landscaping must minimize irrigation needs. Forget it.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, super. Go team. I know. So we have 4 minutes left. I'm going to temperature check on everybody's ability to do any more. And I'm getting a hard no from,
Chair.
yes.
We do need to talk about the schedule. We have to
Yes.
take a timeout from
Yeah.
this.
Oh, no, that's
Okay.
good.
All right.
Yeah.
Good.
So we are going to resume on 2.4.14, and I have a note about asking Public Works about this.
We can see if they'll be available.
Okay.
Also, on that last one, sorry, I forgot about the animals. Do we want to include them?
Sorry, where are you referring to?
2.4.11. I'm gonna definitely come back to this on the next meeting. I'm like at the
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. Yep. Go ahead, Director.
I'm actually going to pass it off to the long range team to talk about the next thing that we have to do.
Okay, so Chair and members, we're on item C, other commission business. And we wanted to bring up the topic of requesting a time extension. The county council by resolution can approve a time extension for the Maui Planning Commission to complete its review. The time review is 6 months, but we are thinking that we might need more than that to complete our review. The clock began ticking on with the first public hearing, which was in May. And so that's the 5th month, and you add 6 months, that would be November, the 11th month. And to be safe and to not stress you out any more than you already are, we would like to request more time. And to be safe, we would like to suggest until February of next year. Yeah, through February.
Through February.
Did you have
Okay.
something more to add?
I see a thumbs up from Vice Chair Thompson. Thumbs up from Commissioner. Yep. You got unanimous consent on this
Thank
one.
you. So
Yep.
Chair, what we'll do is we'll work on the request and then we'll reach out to you for signing that and then we'll transmit it onto the county council. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Nope, thank you. Anything else? All right, guys. Director?
Yeah, so our next meeting will be in September 24th at the Kalana Pukui building right here. Same bad place, same bad time, same bad channel. And we'll see you then.
Wonderful. Good work, everybody. And it's 6:59. Yes.
Early.
Commissioner
Thank
Lindsay, you have a question?
Everyone, thank you, staff, for being there all day with us. Good job.
Yes.
And audience and community, we appreciate you guys too.
Yes. Go team. Appreciate you all. Ahui ho.
Team on the beam and they're a heck of a jive, so come on.
Meeting adjourned.
On these comments.
Good job.
Yeah.